We are live and ready when you are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good, Heidi. Thank you. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order for a regular meeting of the Soldovia City Council on Monday, June 14th, 6 p.m. And roll call, Rojas,
Here.
Peyton,
Here.
Nathan,
Here.
Sweat,
Here.
Holberg. And Morrison.
Yep.
Okay, was John going to call in tonight, Heidi?
He was, but he was in Anchorage and he had some stuff going on, so maybe he wasn't able to make it right at 6.
Okay, so sounds good. He told me he was going to be in Anchorage, so we'll go ahead and excuse him for now unless he calls in. So that'd be great. Okay, and we'll go ahead and have Heidi, if you could go ahead and lead us in the pledge. And this is something we'll start new, where we'll have the city clerk lead us in the pledge so that we don't get the feedback for me being or anyone else being out on the phone.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if you want to unmute some of your mics, that way the Zoom meeting can hear you as well. It'll be, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Excused absences. We just have Kohlberg. Agenda approval.
I'll make a motion. We approve tonight's agenda of June 14th, 2021.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda by Rojas, second by Morrison. All those in favor, Rojas,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Kohlberg, Morrison.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Tonight's consent agenda is item E. All items on the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and one vote. Council member may request to remove any item for discussion in a separate vote. Tonight's consent agenda consists of item 1, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting for May 24th, 2021. Those are in your laydown. And then item 2, ordinance introduction, which is ordinance 21-13, an ordinance of the city of Soldovia, Alaska, repealing Soldovia Municipal Code section 2.52.025, hours of work as amended. And that's on page 5 of your packet. Does any member wish to discuss either of those individually at this time? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve tonight's consent agenda. Second, I think that was by Sweat. All those in favor, Rojas,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Morrison.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 5-0, so the consent agenda is passed. All right, that'll take us to item F, mayoral proclamations, none for tonight. Item G, public presentations, prior notice. I don't see anybody on the list. Heidi, I assume that hasn't changed.
Correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda, and the public has 3 minutes each. Do we have anyone with their hand raised or wish to speak?
We do, Mr. Mayor. We have a Miss Laurel Hiltz.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, got you loud and clear.
All right. I'm over here on the side waving at you. So, all right. Well, thank you. I just wanted to give an update on where things stand for upcoming events in the community. So one I believe we just had Flag Day today that Jenny put on with Jack and Ava's and celebrating our United States flag. And coming up next weekend will be the Seldovia Arts Council. We'll have 2 concerts, one on Friday night, one on Saturday night, as part of the celebrating the summer solstice. And then as we get towards the end of the month, we're moving our way towards the 4th of July. And at this point in time, the Seldovia Chamber and a number of business and volunteers has a whole lot of a whole packed schedule for that day to take place. Knowing that the 4th of July is on a Sunday, I would expect that we'll be seeing activity starting as early as the State Ferry on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, the big hurrah. So live music throughout the weekend and such. But starting with a pancake breakfast at the fire hall and salmon, well, potentially it's TBA. It's not official, but it's potential. And a salmon shuffle from the Arts Council, a book sale by the library, patriotic service by the Seldovia Bible Chapel, the parade hosted by Seldovia Village Tribe, a Kenai Peninsula Brass Band. They're going to march in the parade, and the trumpeter will play the national anthem. And then after all of that's done, they'll do a concert in the pavilion. And then there will be kids games, teen games, flying salmon and eggs, all of that good stuff, in addition to a 0.5K. Let's just say it's a short run for those who are more adept at that, and kayak races plus live music and more that evening. So really excited to see all of those things coming together and looking forward to just a really great day of celebrating. So let's cross our fingers and hope for clear skies. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. Anyone else, Heidi?
I'm not seeing anybody at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that'll take us to item I, Committee and Advisory Board reports. I don't see anybody signed up. Any changes to that one, Heidi?
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, take us down to item J, Administrative Reports, Maintenance and Public Works Report, and this is in your packet, and this is on page 6 of your packet. And it looks like we have April's and May's here, all the activity for April and May. Did anyone have any questions or comments on the maintenance department's reports for April or May?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, are the harbor kiosks, I peeked in the windows and they didn't look like they were done, but did they get done? Are they like ready to, they are? Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, Pearlie.
did we come up with what we're expecting to get for the buildings for rent per month, or have we ironed that all out yet?
Yeah, I believe that was all ironed out. I just don't think we've gotten any, I haven't heard of any tenant agreements yet in place.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. That will.
Mr. Mayor, yes, there is a question from the public.
Okay.
Miss Laurel Hiltz.
Yep.
Okay, can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Yep. Loud and clear.
Okay, so a question, Rachel, would be, is the city maintenance department set with a list of any items that might be needed on the 4th of July? I know that the chamber doesn't have food booths happening, but sometimes we have stage pieces that get put out. And so just want to make sure that those are in our thinking as we're coming closer to the day. So we can connect about what items might be needed, and then just making sure that we have orange cones and things like that for blocking off the street for the parade. So thank you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Laurel. Okay, if there's no other questions, comments regarding maintenance and public works, that'll take us down to item K, public hearings, resolution 21-34, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia authorizing acceptance of a State of Alaska Department of Public Safety contract for special services. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to staff for presentation. This will be found on page 8 of your packet.
Thank you, Mayor. So at Council's last meeting, the Department of Public Safety public service contract came up, and Council decided to table it to this meeting to get a little bit more information. And I'm happy to share that Captain Hughes with DPS is on and available to answer questions and give possible presentation from DPS's perspective of the services that Seldovia Police Department helps provide to the greater Seldovia area. Included in your packet, and I'm sorry I don't have the page numbers handy, is a response from our insurance company saying that regardless if we did not provide services to the greater Seldovia area, we would still be held responsible to the same insurance amount for providing public safety services through the Seldovia Police Department. So there would be no cost savings if the city of Seldovia did not go outside to the greater Seldovia area. So there's an email in your packet addressing that. And there are also questions that council had concerning liability and clarification on the contract. And so I don't know if Captain Hughes has anything he would like to add in terms of what liability the city of Seldovia faces by providing public safety services in the greater Seldovia area, and how that could perhaps change if the city does not offer or accept the terms of this agreement and work with DPS to help the greater Seldovia area. So I want to turn it over to Captain Hughes and then open it up for council discussion, since council postponed the contract till this meeting.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Captain Hughes. I'm the area commander for A Detachment, which incorporates the Kenai Peninsula and then the area around Seldovia. So I don't know if I can answer specific questions. I think what your insurance company has sort of indicated to you is correct. The actual employer who does the hiring and the supervision of the employee would be the responsible party for the liability. Any other questions reference that I can answer? I know there's a lot of different scenarios, but it's kind of hard to go down each scenario and answer specifics on it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead, George.
Yeah, if I could kind of get us up to speed on what we've been hashing over, sir. Apparently, we're doing more things out the road than are actually covered in the contract. And when we asked you for a little more money in the negotiations and provided information showing what we were doing out there and how much time we were spending, your response was that we were doing too much. And what we'd like some clarification on what you want us to do and what you don't. And I think that, I don't know, one suggestion we've had was to refer any call to out of the city limits to your dispatch and let you make the decision of whether you want our officer to respond or not. And that way we'll be providing exactly what you want and not any more than that. And that should clarify and give us a solid ground to go on as far as how we execute this contract. Would you have any other ideas on what we could do to clarify this, or does that sound agreeable to you, or what's your thoughts there?
Thank you, sir, for the question. I certainly appreciate that thought process, and I think that kind of goes in line with what we should be doing. I think for emergency calls, those calls that go into 911 or through as an emergency should be put through, and I think that has a different response. But I think all the other non-emergency calls, I think it's appropriate to go on a non-emergency line to dispatch, and dispatch can either contact the sergeant or troopers in the Anchor Point area, which would be the closest trooper post for that response. To some degree, I thought that's what was happening. And then those contacts that were going into the chief that were outside of the bounds of the contract would then be forwarded on to dispatch here in Soldotna.
Yeah, thank you. I think that answers our question. Of course, we're going to receive both 911 calls and non-911 calls through our own dispatch. And if we can, as I say, just refer any call outside of our jurisdiction to you to make a decision on our response, I think that would solve our problem.
I think, and I've had some discussions with the dispatch center recently just to kind of review what they're going on. They have a copy of the contract. I mean, they should be able to decipher also those things that would be within the contract for those bounds when calls come in outside of the normal emergency calls. I guess the only other thing that's within the contract language that I see would be if the sergeant asked for a specific request of the chief to do something outside the city limits. I don't know that we have received the type of calls that came in the last fiscal year, if you will, before Chief Cushman left. The only one that I was able to obtain were ones from 2019. So I haven't seen exactly what all the calls were from the last fiscal year.
Well, thank you very much. I think we'd be real happy just to go on from here on a new plan and not worry too much about what happened in the past.
Works for me, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you much for your response.
Thank you, George. Anyone else on council with more questions for the captain?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I guess going on what George was saying earlier, I'm looking at a letter from July 13th, 2020 to our previous city manager, Cassie Cameron. And at that time, as George had said, the city had asked for potentially an increase in the amount of money to the city beyond the $20,000 contract because of the amount of calls. It was more than half of the calls were being done outside the city limits. And with a letter that we got back, it basically said, as George responded or said earlier, that calls of service were outside the special services contract. And so for me, I would actually like to see what is it that our police chief should not be responding to, and what are those things? And maybe I would ask our chief right now, what sort of calls has he been getting? Have they been going through our local phone number, through 911? Because we seem to have a problem, especially during budget time that we're going through right now and trying to figure out how we're stretching our budget out. And if our police chief is not to be going on certain calls out the road, then we need to know what those things are. And if he's not supposed to be going on those calls, what is a liability issue to the city? And so I think we really need a lot of clarification. And there's people in the audience who live out the road, and I'm sure they have particular questions. So again, moving forward, I think it's important that we identify what we should not be doing out the road and what we do from this place forward to eliminate the issues and the problems that we're happening, and to let the people out the road speak tonight and say, what do we do if, and come up with an agreement that works for everyone. But right now, the city is in a position where we've been told that we have been responding to issues that we should not be responding to. So I think clarification is really important, pinpointing. And the contract, if you read the contract, I look at it and I'm a little bit confused. It's a little bit ambiguous, but I think it just needs clarification. But I would ask right now, if I may, Mr. Mayor, ask our police chief if he could just say what sort of calls he gets, not what sort of calls, but who is calling you, 911 dispatch in Homer, or how are you getting calls? If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
So most of my calls come in through the local police line, which goes straight to my cell phone. I do have 3 other dispatch agencies that I can receive calls, but very rarely do. Homer Dispatch, Soldotna, and sometimes even from the Trooper Dispatch. Not very often from them, but I have had some contact through them, but most of it's through Soldotna and Homer Dispatch on the 911 calls. They go straight to me. But I very rarely get those. Most of my calls, and I'm not good with the numbers, but I'd say easily over 90% go straight through the police line right to me.
Okay, 2234 number, local Seldovia number.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, I guess that's what I find is a problem that we need to take care of and eliminate or work jointly with dispatch and Homer. So it isn't our police chief who's making that determination, unless it's an emergency, of course, on what we should or should not be doing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up to that, Vivian. So just to clarify then, so the chief gets the number, he gets the calls on his cell phone, both emergency and non-emergency. And then in the past, it looks like Chief Cushman was responding to just about everything out the road, which we now know should have not been the case. And so now we're at the point where if it's an emergency call, obviously our chief has to, from what I understand, I don't know, can he just respond if he feels it's an emergency? He can respond without letting the troopers know, or how does that work? Do you let the troopers know as you're responding if it's a serious call, or just kind of walk us through that if you could? I think that was for, yeah, oh, he didn't have the mic. Okay, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yep, now we got you.
Okay, so sorry. You're saying how do I respond to calls?
Yeah, so basically if you get an emergency call on your non-emergency number, do you just take off and respond to that, or do you have to call in and get it cleared with the troopers first?
Well, that's kind of a tricky question here in Seldovia, because there are times where I don't have radio service or cell phone service. So not all the time do I get to call up and say that I'm responding to places, because of just, I mean, you get spotty cell service in a lot of places. Radio service, I've had the same thing where I've called in and tried to talk to Homer and running things, and I can't even get through on my radio. So it just depends on where you're at. So a lot of the times I am responding without them knowing on calls, but you know, it all depends on where I'm at and what I'm doing.
Okay, so then, but so in a perfect world, I mean, would it just be part of your normal duties to try to call on your way out to an emergency and let them know, or let some dispatch let someone else know that you're responding to an emergency outside of our jurisdiction?
Yes, in a perfect world, I'd call out and tell them what I'm on, where I'm going. Usually they'll call for back, but or call me and check on me every so often. But then you've got to try and hope that you got radio service. So.
Okay, and then I guess what I'm getting at is so that's still, Captain Hughes, so that the emergency portion, that still falls in line whether he's able to get a hold of the troopers or not. If he feels it's an emergency and he responds out the road, that still meets the intent of our contract with Department of Public Safety. Would that be a fair statement?
That's correct. I mean, I think the first one talks about emergency criminal investigation. So that would certainly fall within line of the contract. Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I think that's the big concern here for the folks out of town, is that knowing that if there's a true emergency, that there's going to be someone responding. The whole liability issue, I'm not hung up on that, because that's a whole different issue. But I think the important takeaway here is to know that if our chief is available and there's a true emergency out the road, he's going to respond, and or if it's even a bigger response, the troopers will respond. Then the second piece of that is where we're kind of sideways here is the non-emergency stuff, the property crimes, although important, obviously are not rising to the level of an emergency. And those are the ones that, is the way I understand, to follow the terms and conditions of our contract, we should be not responding in person, but yet referring those folks to call the troopers and handle it directly with the troopers. Is that also a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. And Mr. Mayor, that goes back to the list that I think it was Chief Cushman had prepared either toward the end of 2019. There were a lot of things on the list that he responded to, and I can't really tell if he physically responded to or just spent time on the telephone or what. But there are a lot of those type of calls that are non-emergency calls that, in my opinion, probably should have been, or I think should have been, referred to the office in Anchor Point, and the office there would have handled it because they were not emergency in nature. And I mean, quite frankly, I think that Chief Cushman, he's a police officer. He's trying to help the community. I think he was out there trying to be helpful to all the citizens, both inside and outside the city. But that did take up a lot of his time. But and those are some of the conversations I had with him, but they were outside the bounds of what he should have been doing per the contract.
Okay, yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think that sums it up right there. Yeah, as a public servant, you want to help, do your best to help everyone, but obviously we have, rules, regulations, contracts, all that in place to facilitate a good working relationship between the cities, municipalities, and the Alaska State Troopers. And it's, incumbent on all of us to follow those agreements just to keep everybody out of hot water. It might not be super popular with the residents, but that's the world we live in. So, all right, that's enough for me. Any other questions, comments from council before we go to the public?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Pearlie.
So if I'm out the road, this is for the troopers. If I'm out the road and I see somebody obviously intoxicated driving, I make a ready call. That would go to the state troopers. That's not an emergency call. Is that correct?
That's technically not an emergency call. It's an observation, but it does fall within the guidelines of the contract. There's a provision in the contract that talks about traffic enforcement specifically for DUI and reckless type driving. So in that particular case, that scenario seems to fall within the guidelines of the contract.
So that would be a 911 call, which would go through to the troopers, and then a trooper's going to fly over here for that drunk driver?
No, sir. That would normally be handled by the chief there in Soldovia. That language is within the contract language of the contract that currently is in effect today.
Okay, so I guess I would have to see some scenarios of emergencies or non-emergencies. I know and suspect that about everybody that calls the police are doing it for an emergency situation, whether it's considered an emergency through you folks.
Well, sir, sorry.
Go ahead.
So I appreciate the question on that, because some of it, you don't work as a police officer, but as an officer, we tend to be the catch-all for the community. We get a lot of questions about a lot of different things, hunting regulations. We might get calls about power outages, paper service, questions about, all those things can be very time consuming. A lot of those things are kind of things that Chief Cushman had actually put down on his list. There are a lot of things that he responded to that they were just non-specific. So they, in some degree, might not have anything to do with law and order. They may just be questions that people have to ask. And a lot of times people will default to law enforcement to answer questions. It could be about ATVs. It could be about burning laws or ordinance that may or may not be in effect at the time. It could be animal questions. It could be questions for a driver's license. So there certainly is a lot of time that as a law enforcement officer, we spend responding to the community for not necessarily law enforcement items, and certainly not emergency items.
Right, I totally understand that. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Pearlie. Anyone else?
May I ask a question, Mayor Kimball?
Yep, go ahead.
So as far as calls go that I am assuming fall under non-emergent response would be things like, we live in the village. We get a lot of people who shoot in places that aren't necessarily appropriate. We get a lot of people recreating on private property. There's a lot of like trespassing or, what if, thievery. So if these are all things that don't qualify as emergent calls, if you get a landowner calling your line, at what point do you guys respond? What is your response to that? Are you flying over here for people driving ATVs through a personal property or a creek where they shouldn't be? Are you coming over for property theft? What is your policy for those types of calls
It's not,
in this
it's not,
situation?
so I would say it's not about policy. It's normally about response and what else is going on in the world. So with a limited number of resources, it would be categorized in the response to other items. So if the availability was there and we had troopers available to come and respond, we could send a trooper over for some of those things. It's probably going to be a delayed response. I guess that's the best way to put it, because we don't have a trooper right there to come and respond to some of those type of calls. And as you pointed out, they are not emergencies per se. They are emergency to the caller, I understand, but they are not in the overall scheme of things an emergency at that specific time. So it would depend on what we had availability and if we could get someone over at that time to deal with some of those things.
Sure. So I think we're all reasonable people. Most of us accept that that's the way things happen. But if is there any point in time where you would see enough calls in a night to just dispatch Seldovia PD? Is that something that you guys are willing to do? Take up the local body, or is it something where you guys are just trying to draw a hard line in the sand and say, this is a non-emergent call, we'll respond when we have the man time?
That's kind of hard for me to answer. I have to determine what the call is and what the scenario basis we have. Time and space. What's the weather doing? What's availability for transportation? All those things tend to come into play on some of these things. And quite frankly, at some point, we might actually call the chief and say, hey, can you go check this out? But I would say that's not an everyday occurrence.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor.
Harmony? Anyone else on council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, George.
I think we're coming into the area of good faith and good common sense. I think we hired an excellent person for our chief here, and he's certainly going to be able to sort through these things. He has a long career in law enforcement behind him, and again, if he's acting in good faith and using good common sense, I don't think anyone's going to have a problem with hard lines in the sand. Would you agree with that, sir? Captain?
I would agree with that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add, that if in doubt, you can always call post. I mean, if in doubt, something comes in and, Chief, if Chief Hawkins is uncertain, by all means, call post. If it's after hours, call the on-call trooper if there's no trooper working at the time. We do have 24/7 operations in the Soldotna area. Worst comes to worst, he could call the on-duty supervisor there to run things by. So, we have other options. I appreciate that sometimes communication is a challenge as well, but those are other things that can be done to try to answer questions and talk about different responses.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification, Captain.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead, George.
Could I just ask one more thing, Captain Hughes? Would you consider perhaps helping us with some sort of a communication system that would be usable reliably. And, you seem to have repeaters all over the place. I wonder if we could somehow get into your radio system so we would have reliable communication, not only for calls out the road, but for emergency situations like earthquakes and tsunamis and so forth. Would that be an option that we might consider?
Well, the system itself is handled outside of our department. Well, let me rephrase it, outside of the division of Alaska State Troopers. I can certainly try to get some information to see what could be done. I don't have an answer I could give you right this minute, though. But I can certainly research some information for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Pearlie.
Have you ever run into this situation in other parts of the state where the city police are, has it ever come up anywhere else that are we walking a path that's already been walked before, and was there ever a solution?
Can you be more specific about the path?
As
I mean,
far as I'm under the understanding that there's an issue of who's liable, city or the state, when, and maybe I'm way off base here, but who's liable for Chief Hawkins when he goes out the road? I guess, does our insurance still cover him out the road? Okay, yeah, I'm off base here. Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, can I help with that?
Yeah, go ahead, Chief.
So, and I have the captain here probably can back me up, but anywhere that I respond and do law enforcement, the city will hold me the liability for me. And it's the same thing with the troopers. Wherever they go, their liability will hold them. So like if the troopers came into Seldovia and worked, we don't hold insurance or liability on them, right? Does that make sense? That'd be the same thing as me going somewhere else. Am I correct in saying that, Captain?
That's correct. And I was trying to make that point earlier when I indicated the hiring entity is the person that vets the employee out, ensures that the employee has the correct training and also has supervision of that employee. So my understanding is the employer would be the liability person responsible for that liability. Yes, Chief, I agree.
All right, thank you, Chief. Captain, while I got you, before we go to the public, I just wanted a couple quick questions. Maybe if you could just give us a brief synopsis. There's couple good provisions in the contract that I see this year. The Alaska Record Management System, the ARMS software. It looks like the department's going to provide that to the city at no cost. And then the traffic and criminal software, the TRACS program. Also, knowing we have to have a computer, obviously, that'll handle the software, but two valuable pieces of software. Could you just give us a quick little rundown on ARMS and TRACS and what they would do for us as a small community off the road system here?
Well, sure. A couple of things that came up, referenced this question a couple of years ago when we were trying to validate what the chief was doing, what calls he was going to, and try to figure out how they were initiated. The suggestion came up in some conversation was to look at ARMS. ARMS stands for Alaska Records Management System. And this is what our agency uses on a regular basis. So if we have a call for service, the information for that call for service is uploaded into ARMS. And then when if a report needs to be written or for the incident, then the incident is written into the ARMS management system. So we are currently using it. Homer PD is currently using it. Soldotna PD is currently using it, and other agencies around the state. They have their own portion, but they also have the ability to talk to each other so that information can also be passed to each other, making criminal information much easier flow from all across the state, if you will. So, and the other thing it would bring in discussions in the future, we could also pull statistics from the records management systems on the types of calls for services, breaking down burglaries, domestic violence calls, sexual assaults, or basic assaults. And we could actually, at the end of the year, we could look and see what those calls for service and have them printed out for us. And in the discussions we had a couple years in the past, that would be good for these type of discussions every year when we're talking about looking at the service, special services contract. TRAX is the traffic and criminal software. So if citations, instead of writing out a criminal citation or a citation on a paper, it could be done from a computer and be printed out. And then if it needs to be filed with the court, this is the accepted practice by the court currently. They are trying to get away from using, paper citations now, or handwritten, let me rephrase it, handwritten citations, but going to the TRAX system, which would generate the citation electronically from a computer, and actually do a lot of the filling in the blocks instead of having them automatically from information that can be drawn from ARMS, if you will. So it in some cases it's a time saver for TRAX and doing citations, and then the other side is the ARMS system would be good for record keeping and a depository for writing up different incidents and being able to retrieve them at a later time.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate the brief overview on that. That's good information. I think that's good for the public and all of us in the room to fully understand what those are. So we appreciate that. All right. Anyone else on council before we go to public?
Mr. Mayor, if I may just ask one question, please. Go ahead.
Yep. Go ahead.
That is Captain Hughes. We appreciate the partnership that City of Seldovia has had with the troopers. And but I have a question. I'm not sure if this is in your venue or not. And that is, if we continue, or we are going to continue our contract, if at that time we were, would the local Seldovia Village tribe also be able to bring on some sort of VPSO, and work in the same area outside of the city? Or would that be a question you'd be able to answer? Would the city be able to continue our contract, and would the local Seldovia Village tribe be able to bring on someone of their own?
Okay, so the short answer is I think so, yes. However, that would be something that would have to be worked out through a MOA between the city of Seldovia and I'm going to screw this up. The nonprofit organization. And I'm
The
drawing a
tribal
blank
government?
right. Yes, thank you. And I'm drawing a blank right this moment. But I think it can be done, and I can get that information for you too if you want to explore that. And that would be the VPS, Village Public Safety Officer Program you're speaking of.
Right, in conjunction with the City of Seldovia, continue the contract with the troopers, correct? That's what I'm saying.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
But understand that the two different things. It'd be a contract with the troopers, and then it would be a memorandum of understanding with the grantee. So you would have to contract with the grantee or come up with a memo of understanding with the grantee. The grantee is in deals with the state. So it's kind of a three-prong agreement, if you will. So the grantee would provide the service, and the troopers would provide the oversight for the VPSO in the area. But I can get you the information for that and who to contact also.
Okay, thank you, Captain Hughes.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor.
Who should I direct that to, by the way?
You should probably direct it to the City of Seldovia City Manager.
Okay, will do.
Perfect. Harmony, do you have a question also?
No, I do.
Okay, go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I think one small challenge I think I can see the chief having with being a little bit more selective with the calls out there is convincing the folks out the road what is a true emergency and what they perceive to be an emergency. So I can see that as a little bit of a challenge. But, that's the way it's going to have to be. Thanks.
And I agree, that is always a challenge. Everyone has personal emergencies and it affects people differently. And, when it affects you, it's always heightened. That's one of those things that never goes away.
Yeah, thank you for your response on that. I think that's spot on. So, okay, good. I think we've had good opportunity for back and forth discussion, lots of good information exchange there. So let's go ahead and go to the public and see if the public has any questions or comments.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a couple. Okay. We can start, actually, we can use the podium. That might be a little easier. They'll have their backs to you a little bit. And we can sideways it for everybody. And then you can speak into this. You have to speak into the mic just so that they can hear you. But let's go. First, we have.
Heidi, that mic you're using is not working.
Okay, sorry, just explaining protocol. We're gonna have them come up to the podium. There's a couple. And first, we're gonna have Miss Tracy Philpott. Are you going first? Okay. If you would just state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Tracy Philpott. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to come and address everybody tonight and make sure that we still had access to our fine police officer for emergencies, and it sounds like that's true. We still do, even though it's the middle of the night and it's a drunk driver. We still have access. Is that correct then? He can respond to that, or does he need to call?
Is that directed to me? If that's the
Sure,
case,
sure,
and it's a
yeah.
report of a drunk driver,
Absolutely.
yes, ma'am, that falls
All
within the guidelines of the contract, and
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
you're quite welcome.
Yes, next we have a Miss Laurel. You just turned it on. Now it's on. Oh, sorry. Next we have a Miss Laurel Hiltz.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear, Laurel.
All right, thank you so much. So it's often said about Soldovia that Soldovians don't like change. I think that that's probably often said about people that live in small communities or people that live in any communities anywhere. But I would say that rather, because Soldovians are quite adept and experienced with navigating change all the time, I think that what's harder is the transitions. And so what I would ask of the city government is to just really support Chief Hawkins and the troopers in messaging that goes out to not only those who live inside of the village area, those who live inside of the city limits as well, just in what the appropriate protocol is at this point in time. And so it was pretty surprising to me that here the majority of people call the 234 number. I was like, wow, I only ever called the 234 number if I needed a favor or had a question or something that, you know, the chief of police had information that could help me with. But if I truly had a concern, then I used the 911 system. That's the process that I know to follow. So it just sounds like we probably just need to re-educate the folks and do the hard part of maybe redirecting their calls when they hit the 234 number instead of the 911. But change happens regularly. Transition's hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel.
Yes, we have a Miss Jenny Chissis.
Hey, Mr. Mayor. I guess my first thing is that obviously we're a remote community and we depend heavily on the support of our police chief, which we totally love. And I guess my first thing, no matter what happens and what's decided financially, it's so important to me to consider what the chief can do and what he's comfortable doing and how he can best be supported by our council and by our community. And I think that it's really important, and I have not asked him this, but for him to say what is the best support for him so that he can do his job and safely take care of everyone, because I'm sure he doesn't want to not answer his phone. And yet at the same time, I've lived here 19 years and I've only called 911 one time. And I don't want to call that number, but if it's an emergency, I will. And I know that they will dispatch our police chief. So, you know, some people use that local number probably inappropriately. And I understand that. And maybe he has an idea about how that can happen better, like just not putting it forward, you know, goes to voicemail, says if it's an emergency, call 911, because people won't call 911 if they're on the side of the road necessarily, right? They'd call a friend. So I don't know if police chief, if you have some ideas about how we could best support you and looking at all of these aspects from your position, I think that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, Captain Hughes. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Rachel Friedlander, the city manager here, and I just had a few things that I would love for you to share before we conclude discussion this evening. I was hoping that you could give an overview of the territory or the range that the troopers have to cover for the Kenai Peninsula area and how many troopers you actually have and what services they provide to the community. I understand that it's a vast area, so I just wanted to get a brief overview of that. The pros of having Chief Hawkins or having a chief police chief here in Soldovia for the troopers, and then lastly, what would happen if there was no contract in place with DPS? And I can repeat those because I know it's 3 questions all in one big chunk. So let me know and I can help with that.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Keep me in line. So if I don't hit all the salient points, just put me back in the right direction. So we, the troopers on the Kenai Peninsula, have responsibility for basically the area outside of incorporated spaces. So outside of Soldovia, outside of Homer, outside of Kenai, outside of Seward, outside of Soldotna. All those areas are our areas of responsibility. You know, we defer to those other agencies that have law enforcement agencies to handle the things within their immediate area of responsibility. So we have a whole host of things. We do criminal investigations, we do traffic enforcement, we do search and rescues, we do process service, we move prisoners. So we as Alaska State Troopers, although we're Alaska State Troopers, a lot of people would almost recognize us down south as being more akin to a sheriff's department because of so many functions that we have. You know, we're not just a highway patrol agency. We investigate crimes of all natures throughout our area of responsibility. For total numbers, I'm not prepared for that one right now, but I'm going to be close. I think we have a total of 33 troopers that are, no, it's less than that. About 30 troopers or so that are on the peninsula. That includes Anchor Point, Soldotna, and Seward Post. So that's kind of our complement. We also have a complement of investigators in that number that tend to investigate more complex crimes on the peninsula. Okay, so can you cue me up for the other part of that question that I haven't answered?
Yeah, so the second one was, what are the pros of having a police chief or law enforcement stationed in Soldovia, sponsored by either the city or possibly a VPSO through Soldovia Village Tribe? And then the last question was, what would happen if the city did not sign on with the contract with DPS?
Okay, so clearly the second question, I think clearly the answer to that is a more hasty or immediate response to emergencies calls for service. And I think that's the most important one. I think in communities that are off the road and outside that don't have that, they have to wait for a response. And now we're talking about that, you know, the weather considerations and who's available to go, and all those type of things fall into play. So having an officer, whether it's a VPSO or the chief in that area, is going to give you a more timely response to emergency types of situations. So that's the biggest plus. And that plus is not just for the troopers, that's a plus for the community, a huge plus for the community. What happens if the contract's not signed? I guess off the cuff, I would say, you know, that it's going to depend on us to try to get response over there when we can. There will be a delayed response if the chief is still there. I'm not afraid to ask for help if we need help. If there's an emergency that we can't get to right away, I'm probably going to call and say, Chief, can you help me out? That's just the way business is done here in Alaska. But I see the downside for the folks outside of the city of Soledad in the more rural areas on the road system there. They're going to have even more of a delayed response for emergencies if we don't have some type of a working relationship with the community.
Thank you, Captain.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Appreciate those questions, and Captain Hughes for follow up on that. I think that's a good, appropriate response, and that's the reality of what we're up against here. So, okay, Heidi, anyone else from the public or?
I'm not saying anybody at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I guess with that, then we'll go ahead and bring that back to council for.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
and before you close out, if I can just make one other statement, you know, from my perspective here on the peninsula, I've been with the troopers for over 30 years now. I've worked on the peninsula for a lot of years, on and off in different times. And trust me when I say we're here to serve. So if we can be of help, we will be of help. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I think anyone that's lived in Alaska for any length of time understands, you know, what our state troopers do. And you guys have an incredible job to do in a big geographic area. So appreciate that. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring resolution 21-34 back to council for final action here. Any further comments or discussion on the resolution?
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready to make a motion.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Right, I make a motion the city of Seldovia accepts resolution 21-34.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to accept resolution 21-34, second by Payton. All those in favor, Rojas,
Aye.
Payton,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Morrison.
All right.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. With that means we will continue our working relationship with the Alaska State Troopers under our new contract. So appreciate everyone's input and discussion. Thank you to the public, and Captain Hughes, we really appreciate you coming tonight and taking time out of your busy schedule to answer questions and share some light on a few things for us here in Seldovia.
Anytime, Mayor. Anytime I'm available. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Appreciate it. Hey, real quick too, before you go, I just wanted to extend a sincere thank you as well. We recently had our former chief, Andy Anderson's funeral and celebration of life. And you had a couple uniformed officers, troopers over here at that. And we really appreciate those folks coming over to help out with that. That was a very professional touch, and I think was well appreciated and by the family and the community.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have done it, and I'm glad they were able to make it over and back safely. And I actually worked with Andy back in the 90s for a short time when I was here earlier. So early 90s.
Yeah, a long time ago. All right. Well, again, we truly appreciate it.
Thank you much. You guys have a good evening.
Yep. You too. Have a good evening.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep. Go ahead, Furley.
is the trooper still there?
I think so.
Yes, sir. I'm still here.
Yeah, I just had to have a little clarification on one thing. If we don't do this contract, am I getting the impression that you no longer will work with us? We wanted to have a working relationship with us if we signed this contract. I'm not really understanding that.
No, I'm saying we want it. We want to have a working relationship regardless of the contract. That was my point.
Well, that's not the way I interpreted it. Okay, thank you.
No, I appreciate you clarifying that. That was not my intention. We want to have a working relationship.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Captain Hughes. Appreciate that. You have a good evening. Okay, that'll take us to our second item here of the evening, item K2, resolution 21-33, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia establishing the mill rate for FY 2022. This will be found on page 22 of your packet, and we'll go ahead and a presentation by staff.
Thank you, Mayor. So resolution 21-33 was brought before council at the last meeting, and it was voted to table it till today. Per the Kenai Peninsula Borough, tonight is the last night that council could consider a mill rate increase for the city of Seldovia for FY22. If council does not make an increase or does not pass this resolution, then the borough will default to what the mill rate was for last year, which was 7.5. And the resolution states that the mill rate was set at 7.5 in FY17. And there were a couple memos that were provided to council in this packet. The first one just shares that unfortunately the mill rate decreased further. And let's see, if we go back to the original memo written on May 19th, the borough showed that we had an updated assessment rule of $40,225,741, which at a 7.5 mill rate would generate about $302,000 in revenue for the city. And that's on page 24 in your packet. Then on May 19th, after the May 24th meeting, Assembly Member Willie Dunn followed up with the Borough Assessor's Office, and I found out further that our assessed value decreased additionally. And I now have, and it's provided in your laydown packet, the certified assessed property tax roll for the city of Seldovia. So if you go to page 13 in your laydown packet, you'll see that our assessed value is $39,590,315. And that's a significant decrease from what we had last year, which was $41,624,000. So the repercussions of that are, of course, that we're losing general fund revenue to support essential city services like police, the safety officer, the clerk, the city manager. The general fund supports a lot of essential services. So on page 14 of your laydown packet is a demonstration of what would happen if the mill rate stayed the same based on the decreased assessment rule. And we would bring in an estimated $288,019 for FY22. This is a decrease in revenue of about $20,000 from what we received last year. Last year we budgeted for $312,187. And so this significant reduction in revenue is also compounded by the fact that the city is unsustainably operating as shown in the FY22 budget that was recently adopted. Our revenue, our tax revenue coming in does not cover the expenses associated with the general fund, operating the general fund. So our tax revenues coming in are $441,346, and we're estimating that in FY22 we're going to be spending $621,636. So part of that spending is matched by a withdrawal from the Alaska or from our Seldovia Permanent Fund, which we also call AMLIP. And so by council maintaining the mill rate at the same rate, we're basically compounding the deficit that the city is already operating on. So I provided what it would look like if the mill rate increased by 0.25. So instead of 7.5, we have 7.75, as well as if it went up to 8. And so you wouldn't make up the gap. So last year we made 312,000. You wouldn't make up the gap if you brought it up to 8 mills, but you would bring in an estimated $307,000. And I know I'm throwing out a lot of numbers there and talking fast, so I'm happy to answer any questions, but I just wanted to make sure council had the complete financial picture associated with city operations and the fact that our property tax assessment roll decreased further by about, I think, a couple million, just doing a rough estimate in my head. That just means it's a decrease in revenue for the city that supports our essential services.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Appreciate that. With that, we'll go ahead and take it to council for discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, this is for Rachel. So I believe I asked this before, and of course I didn't write it down and I can't remember what you said. But if we were to increase it by 0.25, what does that translate in actual dollars for the folks that are paying the property tax?
Okay, and I'm looking to Radzi because he helped me too. So let's say you have a $100,000 property and your mill rate goes up by 2.25. That would be another $250. I have a little formula that I use. So it's $1 mil is 1/1000th of a dollar. So it's not substantial to go up by 0.25. I know it could be substantial for certain property owners that have properties that are worth a lot more. But if you had a $100,000 property, it wouldn't be a significant hit if you went up by 0.25. It wouldn't be like you go up 10,000 or your property tax goes up by $10,000 or $5,000 or something like that. If Radzi could help me with the math.
For a $100,000 house, it would be $25 more.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
For a $100,000 property, the tax would go up by $25 a year.
Thanks, Radzi.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask the
Yep.
city manager. Yeah, Rachel, the change in our collections, is that based on the borough assessments going down on our properties in town? What are we basing it? What is it based on?
So I spoke with the borough assessor today, and there's senior exemptions. So more people apply for senior exemptions. Also, people appeal their property values, and so that can decrease the assessment roll. You can have organizations that apply for exemptions, like if you're a religious organization or governmental entity, you can be granted a mandatory exemption. HEA gets an exemption. So all of those add up to.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out how in this past year do we end up, how much money are we talking different from last year to this year? Because if it's senior exemptions, I know, but everybody else has still been on the books with their exemptions unless somebody who hasn't been doing it. It just seems like a big change from last year to this year. And I know I talked to the borough while you're looking that up. I talked to the borough about the senior exemption, and that's City of Seldovia only uses $150,000 off the cost of a property. That's all the city, that's mandated by the state of Alaska, and we can't do anything about that. But I know my assessment on my property went up a little bit, so I'm just trying to figure out how are we getting less money when it seemed like maybe the assessments have gone up, unless there's been a marketably that many more people who have filed for the senior exemption.
Through the mayor, thank you, Councilmember Rojas. Those are great points, and I'm just quickly doing some math here for you. So our assessment roll, the change rather than just giving a back of the napkin estimate, was $2,034,683. So we decreased our assessment roll by a little over 2 million. And that can be because you have an organization that can qualify for a complete exemption. So like the city of Soldovia, for example, we don't pay property tax, that would be taxing ourselves. So there can be other governmental organizations or charitable organizations that do that. So I don't know the full reason for why our assessment roll went down by over 2 million, but that does have a significant impact on the property tax revenue we receive.
Yeah.
And I don't think you were at the last meeting,
No, I wasn't.
but Assemblymember Dunn was surprised to find out that the city of Soldovia's assessment roll decreased because for a lot of other municipalities, it actually increased.
Interesting. So maybe there were people who appealed their assessed values. I mean, $2 million for Soldovia is a significant amount. And that we've been staying pretty much steady. And then all of a sudden in 1 year, we've lost $2 million in assessed value. So unless people have either, like I said, my little place went up a wee bit. And so I thought with the general attraction of Soldovia, most places were going up a little bit. So surprising that $2 million we came down, unless, as you said, people are appealing and then the borough was going along with those appeals for less worth of their property. It's disappointing, and it puts us in a position to have to do something, which is really disappointing. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else, questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, George.
Yeah, my property tax has gone steadily up since I came here. And you're talking about apples and oranges when you mix the assessments up with the mill rate. What they assess the value of your home is how they keep increasing. The mill rate increase, as you pointed out, is minimal. Where they keep trying to generate more and more and more revenue is by assessing your property at a higher and higher rate. So the only way that we've lost this several $1 million is by people becoming exempted from paying property tax at all, and by people that are protesting the amount of their assessment and getting that reduced. So what I pay has gone up $100 a month in the last 10 years, and it's based on they keep making the value of my house higher. Mill rate has stayed about the same. So that's how we're getting squeezed. That's what it's about.
Okay, thank you, George. Anyone else? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
So right now, correct me if I'm wrong. Right now, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong format here. We're talking about the discussion right now is if we're going to increase our mill rate, correct? Right.
Yep. So we need to establish something tonight.
So through the mayor, council member Rojas, before you is resolution 21-33. Let me pull up the resolution number. And right now it's currently stated to say 7.5, but council could make a motion to amend the resolution to change the mill rate amount, because as mentioned in previous meetings, not only are we going to need to generate more revenue, but we're going to also need significant budget cuts to make up for the overspending. So that's what's before you tonight is what mill rate do you want to set? And the borough says it has to be done before June 15th.
Right. Mr. Mayor, if I may continue.
Yep, go ahead.
Boy, so this puts us in a rough position. The mill rate, the assessment, what we get is pretty much how we function as a city, paying for our bills. Besides sales tax, I would like to see us maybe, but sales tax takes a couple of years to go into effect. So when we get to the public, I'll be interested to hear what you all have to say. I would also like to say if I vote to increase the mill rate, I would be doing that with a caveat, and that is I want the city of Seldovia to find and research lost revenues that we're not getting right now. And I think some council members have some ideas of how we can gain some revenue that we're not gaining right now. I hate to put the burden on the 143 households, if that's the right number, I always forget, in Seldovia, on our houses, on our properties to support the city. But that's it. That's what we are. There's only so much of us here. And we need to be creative about how to come up with supporting what we support. We like our policemen, we like our water and sewer, we like our harbor, you know, and so during this process of budget has been hard to deal with. It's been hard to look at it. We've been in a situation, the city's been in a situation where we had lawsuits trying to protect the city. That costs us money. Employees leaving, that costs us money. All of these unfortunate events that came across it put us in the hole even more than what we thought of. I feel for the community members of increasing the mill rate. I feel for us. But I really don't know how we're going to do this, how we're going to make a budget without increasing a little bit and try and pick up. But again, I want to find lost revenues. And there's some stuff in the city that's going on that we need to find lost revenues. I think we have a staff that works incredibly hard and we pay them, not, you know, bless their hearts, they work for what we pay them and the insurance we get is not that great. So we have staff and people who work for the city and put their all in and they stay with us. We, you know, right now we're cutting back hours. I don't know what else we can do to support our community. So I'll be curious what people in the public have to say and council members. But I think we're looking at having to somehow come up with some more revenue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else on council?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Very well said, Vivian. That was very well said. And I totally agree with you on everything. You know, finding the solutions is the challenge. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Rachel, I asked you before you took your time off about the revenue we're getting from interest on our permanent fund. Did you come up with some numbers about that? What sort of revenue are we drawing from our permanent fund?
So if I'll just pull up the budget really quick and through the mayor, Councilmember Nathan, that's a discussion we're going to have very soon regarding the Seldovia Permanent Fund, but per our municipal code, we're restricted and how we can invest it, which is very conservative and risk adverse. So I think I was sharing with you that I think we make $6 in interest on the Seldovia Permanent Fund. And so that can be something that we work on very soon. And last year we withdrew $25,000 from the Seldovia Permanent Fund. And this year it's budgeted without a additional revenue source. We're going to withdraw about $21,000 from the Seldovia Permanent Fund. And if I quickly pull up the manager's message in the budget. Because it's hard to remember the numbers quite off the top of your head.
Well,
So over the, let's see, since 2014, the city of Seldovia withdrew $1,140,946 from the permanent fund. Let's just say 1.1 million. And then we were able to put back into the fund 510,000. And we're actually supposed to repay the permanent fund. So we haven't been doing that either. And so unfortunately, by us with aging critical infrastructure and not raising enough revenue to establish reserves so that we can take care of failing infrastructure and make improvements, as well as some of the other things that Councilmember Rojas said, we're basically compromising or could be compromising the future generations of Seldovians because we're eroding away the Seldovia Permanent Fund.
I'm not advocating spending the fund. I am advocating doing what we have to do to generate more revenue with it. We just got to change what we're doing to, it seems ridiculous to make that tiny amount of interest on that size of an investment. And maybe we need to look at changing the rules that we're laboring under. We're going to have something spectacular in order to recover from the hole we're in right now. And that level of revenue coming from the fund is not going to do it.
Thank you, George. Anyone else on council?
Mr. Mayor, if I might chime in.
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
I think the point has been pretty thoroughly vetted. I really appreciated what Vivian said. There's a lot of deficits in our budget, a lot of things that are holding us back from excelling. But I am not comfortable with the continually raising the taxes on so few of us who live here year round, who are trying to make this city go. I understand that that's how municipalities run, but our city we need to find a way to make our budget viable outside of the continual increase of taxation on us. I mean, there's so few of us contributing to this pot, and there's a lot more people benefiting from the pot than are actually putting in. So, I see that we're here where we are for a reason, but we need to move forward with a much tighter belt and a lot more intuitive thinking. I don't know. That's easy to say, I understand, but anyways.
Okay, thank you, Harmony. Yeah, I'll go ahead and chime in a couple comments here. So yeah, I agree with what Harmony is saying there. I think I've thought this through long and hard too, and it's the same thing. I mean, we can continue the same vicious cycle of having a revenue shortfall and increasing taxes because that's the easy way out of it. What I want to see is a more, and the council's already talked about it, and it's on our agenda. It's going to be coming up here in the near future when we start talking about our assets, our lands, our use. Basically everything's on the table. And I think I've seen zero movement on any of our properties since I've been here, going on 9 years. And I see the same junk sitting on the same properties and not a single thing has changed. So, and these are valuable properties some of these are waterfront properties, some are commercial properties. And I think that it's time to have that discussion. So whether it is, here's the bottom line. Vacant property does nothing for a community, absolutely nothing. It does zero for your tax base. It's just a liability. It's maybe great to look at, but it does you nothing if you're trying to support a community, especially as small as Soldovia is. And yeah, I mean, we've talked about all the small amount of citizens that we have and the small amount of taxpayers that we have. And every time we do this, it's just another burden on the taxpayers to take care of, everything that is our problem right now. So I think like George said, yeah, $6 on a $500,000 or 600,000, that's ridiculous. So we've got to take what we have and start thinking outside of the box and making it work for us. So yeah, I'm definitely at this point. I know it'll be painful, but it's going to force us to have to take a look at other options other than raising the mill rate to compensate for the revenue shortfall that we have. So I'm definitely in opposition to this at this time. So that's my 2 cents for tonight. So if we want to go ahead and open it up to public comment, I'd like to hear from the public if anyone's got any comments on this, and then we'll bring it back to council.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a few. We'll have Ms. Jenny Chissis first.
Okay.
Okay, I brought my notes. Hey, Jeremiah.
Hey, Jenny.
Okay, the first thing I wanted to say, what Vivian was talking about was exemptions and senior exemptions. If you're over 65, you can apply for a senior exemption, which is 300,000 of up to 300,000 of your assessed value for an exemption. So $2 million is what, 6-7 families or 7 seniors. Is that correct?
Somebody's mic's not on there. We
Yeah,
can't.
sorry, Jeremiah. I just want to make a correction. It's $150,000 senior exemption within the city limits. Outside of the city limits, that's where they can do the 300,000. So 150,000 of the first $150,000 of a senior's exemption.
Okay.
In the city of Seldovia.
I'll double check. Still, it's a small amount of people that actually age out into a new level of paying their taxes. So it's not that many people in the end that could change those numbers for you. I guess the $10,000 downfall or shortage, I mean, I look at a lot of things. I remember when I worked on PAC, and the kids are doing bake sales to raise money to do some kind of sports activity or booster club or something like that. And so all the mothers and the kids would do a big bake sale, and everyone would work at home and buy all the ingredients and make their things, bring them to the bake sale, and they'd make, $150 or so, which is great. It's good to involve the children. It's good to make a little money, but that wasn't enough to take care of flying kids across the bay to do basketball or whatever. We needed to think bigger. So we sold banners to businesses for $300, right? Instead of $150 with everybody's family, not just making them, setting out there all afternoon by Main Street Market, because that was my time, but anyway, and then the parents even buying the brownies back, right? So I think Harmony said it right, and that we have this small group of people that we can't just keep taxing for this amount of shortfall. We need to think bigger, and I agree with what Jeremiah was saying on that too. We do, as a city, we have 50 properties, I think I looked at, and I know there's a lot of different ideas about that, about releasing those properties. Right now, it's a pretty strong market, and people are buying property and developing property, which raises the assessed value of the property, which is your tax base. And so I think that it's important to look at those assets and what they can do long-term for the city. It's not just about selling that property one time. It's about having someone build a home and a family and putting their kids in school and building a business here in town. There's hardly anything available for people to buy. So I think that's a really good avenue of potential revenue for the city that that you guys should consider. And I also think that incentives for businesses, I think the water sewer incentive is a great thing. I mean, people who run businesses are bringing in sales tax revenue. That's big, and we want to encourage businesses. We want people to come and build a business, not just come and take, but come and give. And if we can create some incentives for those people to participate and actually invest in those properties to develop them, increase the assessed value, we're thinking bigger, thinking long-term, thinking, not selling brownies, but selling a banner, right? And really making some big steps. But I guess it's really painful that we have the highest mill rate in the borough. That's really painful. And I realize there's budgets, and I know this is a hard job, but I really am not in favor of raising the mill rate. I'm in favor of thinking outside the box, like Mr. Mayor said. I mean, I look at those two, little cabins down there by the water, and you could maybe sell one for $15,000. And I know, Bobby, that's terrible. And I don't really mean that, but I mean, there is revenue here that's available if we think a little bit differently about long-term. So I guess that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Anyone else, Heidi?
Yes, Mr. I'm turning it off backwards. We have a Miss Sandy Bridge.
Hi. Hello, Mayor Campbell.
Hey, Sandy.
How are you?
Good.
I would like to kind of dovetail on what Jenny suggested. I would be happy to serve on a committee, but I really think we need to think out of the box, like you said. And I think we need to encourage and find out what businesses in small communities in the United States are thriving. What kind of tax incentives are they giving to maybe bring businesses, and maybe kind of look into that and see what we can do to bring more businesses into Soldovia. I just feel like those businesses will help not only with the mill rate, but they're going to help with increased sales tax. And I think we just need to, Soldovia is a wonderful little place. We just need to get more people to come here to open a business. But I think we need to find a good way. Right now, it is not a tax. It's not good for me to do business here. It really isn't. I mean, I have a very small markup. I consider my business more of a community service than it is a business. My husband calls it a hobby. But I want to see more businesses want to come here. And what can we do to encourage them? What incentives can we do to encourage them? There are small towns around the United States, even now, that are thriving. And I think we need to find what they're doing and copy it. And like I said, I'd be happy to help do research or whatever we need to do. But I think we need to think out of the box and see what we can do to bring more people here. I mean, I would be thrilled if there were 4 more gift stores in town. I mean, some people say, what about competition? The more there is for people here to do and more services for the people that live here year round. I know somebody that was looking at a fabric / quilting / yarn store. She ended up doing it in Soldotna because it was a more friendlier tax community for her. And I thought, what a shame. That would be so great here in Soldovia. I mean, the women in the wintertime could be making quilts together and stuff. I mean, it could be a year-round business. But anyway, I'd be happy to help and do research or whatever you deem, but I really would like to make this a more friendly tax base for businesses to grow and get more businesses here. Whatever you think, but I'd be happy to help out. I just need some support and some direction, and I would be happy to do research or whatever you feel would help bring this, maybe move it forward.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Yeah, well, I anticipate we're going to be having a number of meetings in the near future here on all things that we're discussing tonight.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. We have a Mr. Paul Chisses.
Okay.
Or Sonny, whatever you prefer.
Sonny or Paul. Mr. Mayor, this isn't, first, let me thank you all for doing what you do. I'm not sitting behind the chair, and I know it takes time and hard decisions have to be made. I guess my comments tonight first would be what happens next year when the tax assessments go back up. And they'll go back up because everybody's working on their houses. Everybody's building their houses, taking care of them. Tons of materials are coming into town. Property values are going to go up. Everybody's working on their houses. So I assume that next year the assessment would go up. So will the tax go back down? I don't know if it will. I don't think it will. It usually just keeps going up. It's maybe an easy thing to do at this juncture, but I strongly disagree with it. It does send the wrong signal, I think, to people and people considering coming here. People are flocking out of cities that are getting out of control with taxes. They're leaving. States are growing as a result. And I think that it really needs to, if you look at the future of our growth, we've got to be friendly to all people, everybody that's coming to this community. And so avenues need to be explored. Now, finally, I think there's a lot of people that aren't here tonight. And I think that in my view of our community, if this was put to a vote, if everybody in this community knew that there was going to be a vote on this tonight, I'd like to know how many people would come. And I'd like to know how that vote would turn out. Now, I know that you guys are sitting here in lieu of them to make that vote, but I want to urge you to think about the people in the community. Now, if you must, this is a crazy idea, and I don't know all the details, but I understand that when you build a school in a community that there's a provision and everybody agrees that we're gonna, for a short period of time, we're gonna fund this school. And the community makes that decision and it's a short period of time and then it stops. And I think that there's a tax like that. I'm not advocating for it, but I'm just trying to provide a possible solution. Anyway, thank you for your time. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else, Heidi?
It's hard to see over this podium. I am not seeing any other hands at this time.
Okay, sounds good. That will close out public presentation, bring it back to resolution 21-33, back to council for final action. Any further discussion from council on resolution 21-33?
I have a quick question, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Paul brings up an interesting point. One, can we, upon property assessments for the coming fiscal year of 2023, reevaluate our mill rate and bring it back down? I mean, it seems like an obvious yes, but I'd have to agree. I've never seen this type of tax come back down. And can I ask what was your proposal? Are you saying that we?
Well, I understand that there's
Here.
No, I just, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
I understand there's a shortfall. I understand there's a problem, and I understand you want to plug the hole in the dam.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't run around plugging holes in the dam. So if you're going to do something, will it go away? That's all I'm saying. I mean, a temporary, and I did say I'm not advocating for this. I was just suggesting it, that a short term, okay, it's a short-term tax. 1 year, let's get through this hump, but by next year, we got to solve the problem.
Right.
That's all I was saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that answer it?
Yeah. I just wanted to, I mean, you're a member of the community. I wanted to hear more about what you had to say.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
the mill rate increase is a drop in the bucket. It's peanuts. We just did the math and it's $25 per 100,000. What we've got to do in order to make a difference in taxes for everyone is cap the doggone assessments. The county assessors have gone berserk for a number of years. There was 1 year when they came and bumped everybody up. I took about a 50% increase in 1 year, and I didn't do anything to stupid house. It's just now got paint on it. So I don't know if we even have the ability to cap the assessments. A lot of states have done this, and that's where the big gouge is going to be as far as upping taxes. Look, I'm not crazy about increasing taxes at all. I mean, I'm a guy that lives here and I have to pay them too, but it's 11:59. And we've just got to do something right now. And if we could consider, when we're out of the hole, reducing this again. I don't think this 0.25 mill rate increase is going to do much for us. But it's something that I think we're just going to have to bite the bullet at this time. That's about all I can say about it.
Okay, thank you, George. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. I personally am against raising it also. I just use the 0.25 as a thing. I can't think of the word right now. I just wanted to know what 0.25, translates to dollars. But on the other hand, I also agree with George. We're going to have to do something. Is this the right solution right now? Probably not. But I also agree with Paul. I think maybe doing it for 1 year, we can lower it again. We can set it whatever we want when it comes up again next year. So maybe just doing it for a year, if it'll help. I know it's not going to help a whole lot, but I guess it'll help some. So anyway, that's just my comment.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Right, the 0.25 is $25 on $100,000. So you have a $200,000 house, you're paying $50 more a year, and somehow it'll accumulate into maybe $10,000 that the city would get, correct? If we went up 0.25.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Rojas, if you guys go to page 14 in your laydown packet, you'll see that if you keep the mill rate the same at 7.5, you're going to generate an estimated $288,000. Last year, we received 312. If you raise it to 7.75, you're going to generate 297,000 or 298,000. So it's $10,000 more. And if you raise it to 8 mils, you're going to increase to 307,000. So you're still under what we netted in revenue for last year, but that's reducing how much money you're going to be withdrawing from the city's savings to balance the budget. So right now we're pulling 20 grand from the savings to operate the city since we have to have a balanced budget.
Thank you. Looking at this, I mean, if the chances of taking the mill rate down is doesn't usually happen. If we increase it to bring it down, I would hope that we would be able to do that at some point, but it doesn't generally happen to the general public. I think we need to look at increasing our sales tax. That way everybody contributes to the community, not just the people living within the community of the city limits. But that's, like I said, a 2-year program. I think we have to vote on it even. We don't have very many choices. I think the ideas of, as Jeremiah brought up, about possibly selling some property, that's a possibility. Could probably bring us $20,000 a lot easier than the mill rate, but I don't see where we have a whole lot of choices right now. If we tighten our belts, which the belts are tight. I don't know if you guys have been part of the budget, those people in the audience. The budget is pretty darn tight. There's not a whole lot of flexibility, but then again, there are some properties that I want to see, and it probably not going to make a lot of people very happy, but I want to see us start charging some revenue or getting some revenue back on our parking area. That's that way people out the road are paying for it. People across the bay are paying to park within the city limits, and we get some revenue, and it's fair to those people in the community who are paying taxes. We need to come up with some way that the community of Seldovia helps contribute beyond the city limits of Seldovia. We all know that. I don't know which way I'm going to vote on this. It's a minimal amount to take it up to 7.75. Add up another 0.25. It's minimal hurt to me of $25 or $50 or something for the year. But it's a tough one, and we got a lot of work to do on our end to help balance this budget in the future and change things. So we just don't keep relying on the easy way, which is doing the mill rate. That's the easy way to to balance our budget. The real work is trying to find that revenue that's escaping us, and we need to work hard on doing that. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, one more comment.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with Vivian. I think part of our issue has been over the years that we've touched on a whole lot of subjects of how to do stuff, what we should do, but we don't really ever go into it in detail, which is what I think has we've needed to do for a long time. And I think one of the ways to do it or to get a good start on it is this land management thing. Once we determine what land we do have, what the uses are, what the uses can be, you know, should we sell it? Should we not? I think that's going to give us a clearer picture of possibly obtaining some increased revenue. I think it's going to take a lot of work. I think it's going to take some workshops. So I think, yeah, until we do that, I don't know if we can really figure out what to do for an increase in revenue right this minute. I think maybe our only option would be to, right now, is to raise the mill rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Perley.
Yeah, I'm certainly against raising the mill rate again. I see so many opportunities around town for revenue that, like, the line, the ball gets dropped and they don't seem to go anywhere. Has there been anybody kind of monitoring what's going on in that parking lot as far as automobiles every day? I suggested that one time and a long time ago in one of these meetings, and was it ever followed through with? Have I been watching it? Yeah, I've been watching it. There's up to 20, 25 cars a day parked in that parking lot. That there's a revenue that we're just letting slip away. Because why? Because it's there and we own it and we can just do what we want with it. It's time to start getting some revenue off these properties. I approached Mayor and I'm sure you remember about buying a piece of this property. That was months ago. Where'd it go? I tried to follow the steps. Who am I supposed to talk to? Well, I'm directed to talk to the mayor and well, then it has to go up for bid. But has it been up for bid? I haven't seen anything about it. There needs to be a little more follow through. I think we got some pretty good ideas, but they just don't seem to go anywhere. And I don't, it's hard for me to understand that. I guess I'm a, probably, but when I get an idea, to me, there's got to be that gumption to just jump into it, and if it works, it works. If it don't, try something different. But just I'm going anywhere with them is just don't make sense to me. I guess some different mold. But anyway, there's some opportunities here. Our yard down there by the value added building looks like some kind of bomb off in there. The abandoned vehicles and logs crisscross stacked in there. Let's dress this place up and maybe encourage some people that have some deep pockets to come in here and utilize some of this land. That I certainly don't believe that we need to store 8 or 10 dump truck loads of gravel down there when we got this really nice location right out here by the crane. That stuff could be sitting. That's property that's just sitting there vacant and looks like a garbage pile or abandoned vehicles. And I can't believe it would be that costly to clean that stuff up and make it presentable, where somebody could come in here and say, hey, look at this value added building and look at this area here we got for to branch off in that building. And we just got, it's like we're stagnant here. We don't, but anyway, I'm sorry to rant on, but that's all I got. Thanks. I'm not in favor of raising the mill rate.
Okay, thank you, Pearlie. Anyone else? Hey, Heidi, I have a quick question. I'm starting to get a bunch of distortion and stuff on my end. Can you hear me okay, or am I distorted?
No, we can hear you just fine, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm not sure which signal it is then. The picture's pretty, it looks like our internet on maybe that end is starting to, the signal's getting a little decreased, but all right. Well, so I guess at this point, we're going to either need a motion or an amendment for resolution 21-33.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
I would like to make an amendment to resolution 21-33 to raise the mill rate to another 0.25. And this would only be, in my purview, would only be for the next year to cover us. And then I guarantee to drop it down. And in the meantime, taking care of issues that we are not taking care of lost revenue, namely what Pearlie was talking about and other city council members. For right now, I see that we need to do something to take care of where we're at. And this is again, the easiest fix, not the most hardest, or it is, and the hardest decision. But it also is something that we can reverse and work towards and set goals to change. That's my amendment, whether it goes or not. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian. Do we have a second on that?
I second it.
Okay, any discussion on the amendment?
So Vivian, to be clear, you want the mill rate to be at 8?
No, no. 0.25, increase of 0.25, so it'd be 7.75, going from, or
7.5. Okay, well, that's what the resolution says, doesn't it?
No, we're at 7.50.
Yep, resolution 7.5.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Oops.
Nope, you're correct. Yeah, the resolution is at 7.5 as it stands right now.
What is the current mill rate right now?
7.5.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm asking for an amendment to increase it to 7.75, taking it up to 0.25, the minimum.
And that's not what the main motion says? I thought that's what we were going to vote on, was a 0.25 increase, which would bring us to 7.
No, the resolution 2133 right now, the language is establishing the property tax mill levy rate at 7.5 for fiscal year 2022. So that's the main motion. And then we would need an amendment, which was offered up to increase it by 0.25 to 7.75.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, and did I hear a second?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Councilmember Sweat seconded.
Okay, so Sweat seconded. Okay, then we had discussion. Okay, if there's no further discussion on the amendment, we'll go ahead and vote on the amendment to increase the mill rate by 0.25. And Rojas.
Aye.
Peyton.
Aye.
Nathan.
Aye.
Sweat.
Aye.
Morrison.
No.
Okay, motion for the amendment still passes 4-0. That will take us back to the main motion, which is resolution 21-33, now amended for a mill rate of establishing a mill rate of 7.75 for 2022. Any further discussion on the main motion as amended?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead.
If I could get that motion made and seconded for the minutes. We don't actually have a motion on the table for the main motion. So the
Okay.
amendment happened and that's okay, but there is no main motion.
Okay, so we skipped right to the amendment, didn't we? Okay, so we'll need to go ahead and get a motion for Resolution 21-33. We're kind of out of order here.
Okay, I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor, for Resolution 2133 to accept resolution.
Okay, is there a second? Do we have a second?
Yeah, second.
Okay, so Heidi, the motion to adopt resolution 21-33 was made and then seconded, made by Rojas, seconded by Nathan.
Correct, Mr. Mayor, and that will be as amended.
Correct. Okay, any further discussion on resolution 21-33 as amended? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on 2133 as amended. Rojas,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Morrison.
No.
Okay, motion passes 4-0 to establish the 2022 mill rate at 7.75. At this time, I am going to go ahead and just notify everyone due to the time constraints that under Soldovia Municipal Code 2.08.050, I intend to veto that action tonight. I believe that we're taking the easy way out and that, I mean, I'm not going to be real popular with the administration, but I think there's other ways that we can look at this too, and it's time to have the hard discussions about cuts, revenue, assets, property disposal, et cetera. Also under 2.08.050, if a veto is going to be used, it shall be submitted to the council at its next regular meeting, a written statement advising of the veto and giving the reasons. So I'm giving those forewarned tonight because this action was due to the borough clerk by tonight so that they can get it on the meet the deadline for tomorrow. So with that being said, the city manager, do you, I assume with that veto, then the mill rate would hold at 7.5, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yep, so that's where we're at. At the next meeting, I will submit my veto and reasons. So obviously, no one likes to use that very often and go against the wishes of the majority, but I think we're hitting the easy button tonight. So that's why I chose to use that. So with that, it's almost 8 o'clock. So we've been going for 2 hours here. Let's take a 10-minute bathroom break, smoke break, whatever you want to do. And then we'll come back and we've still got a lot of business to cover tonight. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We about ready to get started again here? You're on mute, Heidi.
Ready to call the meeting back to order? Oh, can you hear me?
Now I got you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was
Yeah,
muted.
no, I got you now. Now we got George running.
Yeah, everybody is working to take their seats. Just missing George. Okay, Mr. Mayor, your council is back and seated.
All right, sounds good. All right, item excuse me, K3 will be next up, resolution.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
if I may, after calling the meeting back to order, if I could ask for a clarification on that veto previously discussed, that was for this evening, and then you would submit your comments in writing before the next council meeting, correct?
Yeah, I believe I still have to do that. I just wanted to make it known that that was my intent, that I was going to do that tonight.
And then the council could override that veto with a 2/3 vote.
Correct, absolutely.
But the veto isn't until you submit it in writing, correct?
Yeah, do I need to submit that so I can be up to that? Do you need me to submit that tonight? Before or tomorrow morning, or what? Yeah, what do you need to?
Right, it's just the time constraint. So I would think that the veto could hold as long as the actions were, or the reasonings were submitted to the council before the city could submit the mill rate, as long as the council doesn't choose to override the veto.
Correct.
Does that
So I
make
guess,
sense? Yeah. Sorry.
okay.
Does that make sense to everybody? He's stating he's going to use his power to veto the motion tonight to amend the resolution, but he has to submit his reasonings in writing to the council, and within the next day, because the council, or because the city has to submit to the borough the resolution, but the council, you guys still have the option this evening, or to hold a special meeting if it's necessary tomorrow, to override that veto if you choose. No? Sorry.
No, it has to be done tonight.
Has to be done tonight. So whatever is done tonight, we'll have to receive those reasonings tonight, but knowing that those are coming, the veto will be in effect unless the council chooses to override.
So through the mayor, City Clerk Gagel, would the mayor call a vote to override his veto tonight?
Yeah, I believe that the council would make a motion.
Okay. So a council member could make a motion to override the veto, and we need a 2/3 majority, which would be 3 council members voting in the affirmative to override his veto.
If that was the council's choice.
Okay.
Okay, so hang on, point of order here. So then if I don't submit a written, so let's go back to exactly what the code says here then. Yep, we're going to stand down here for a minute. The mayor may veto any ordinance, resolution, motion, or other action of the council and may by veto strike or reduce items in appropriations except when prohibited by law. He shall submit to the council at its next regular meeting a written statement advising of his veto and giving his reasons. So I can do that. I can wait till the next meeting to do that. As a courtesy, I notified everyone that I had planned to do that. So we cannot, veto is overridden by the vote of 2/3 of the authorized membership of the council within 21 days following the veto or at the next regular meeting, whichever is later. So if we're going to go into a little strategic battle here, then I will withhold my veto until I'm allowed to submit it by the next meeting, and the council can't take any action. And then that's going to cause us to have a little quandary with the borough tomorrow morning.
Right. I guess that's where we're asking for clarification because of the time constraint. It just leaves not a lot of room for either party, either the veto or an override should they choose. Alaska statute does, I was just pulling up Alaska statute because it does address this. And the language is a little bit different, though not much. But Alaska statute 29.20.270 says, under state law, the mayor of a first class or home rule municipality may veto an ordinance, resolution, motion, or other action of the council and may eliminate or reduce items in the budget. Second class, yada, yada, about second class cities. A veto is a rejection of an action adopted by the council and that prevents the action from taking effect. A veto must be exercised before the next regular meeting of the governing body and must be accompanied by a written explanation of the reasons for the veto. A veto may be overridden by a vote of 2/3 of membership of the governing body within 21 days following the veto or at the next regular meeting, whichever is later.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
well, it sounds like one of us has our hands tied. I'm not sure which one. If you don't veto this, it becomes law. I don't believe you can veto it after that. If you veto it tonight, then you're going to have to come up with the information justifying the veto tonight, and we'll have the opportunity to override the veto. But if you think you can just wait until after this has been adopted and veto it, I don't think you can do that.
Oh, I think I can.
Okay.
I definitely think I can. So I will let the administration figure that one out, and I will withhold my veto until the next meeting then.
All right, then I would ask the city clerk to just go ahead and submit this to the borough because we've passed it and it was not vetoed.
Wait. If this has to be submitted to the borough, is that not the deadline?
Tomorrow.
Right. So tomorrow's our deadline. Are we saying that we can submit what the council has passed and then in 2 weeks, the mayor can veto our decision and we can renege on
That's what the mayor said.
But it seems like if he's gonna veto it, it needs to be done tonight, right? Because we can't take action.
No,
until-
not according to the code. I'm following the code per the letter. Now, the caveat to this is that there's a deadline tomorrow,
Yeah.
but outside of our control.
Mhm. Which is why I'm confused. Can he, I mean, this is our last meeting to decide this. So I don't see that he can defer his veto if he is in fact going to choose to veto.
Well, what I think needs to happen is it can get submitted tomorrow as past action. And then, I mean, I guess we'll figure out what the borough says when they know that a formal veto is coming at the next meeting. The borough can sort that out and see how they want to handle that. And then as a formality, after that's submitted, then within 21 days, the council, if they come back and chooses to override, then they can come back and override with a 2/3 vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
since everyone seems to be a little unclear as to exactly what to do because of the time restraint, can someone call the borough in the morning real quick and find out what the deal is? If it's different than what we think?
Yeah, that's probably the only reasonable action here.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Sweat. So our Seldovia Municipal Code is different, slightly different than Alaska state statute. And my interpretation, this is my interpretation, and we may need to involve the city attorney, is that the mayor can veto tonight council's decision of passing the resolution with the increased mill rate. And then he has to give his written statement at the next meeting of his veto. And by doing this, he is preventing council from changing the mill rate because you have to wait till 21 days following the veto or at the next regular meeting, whichever is later. And I'm assuming the next regular meeting is later. Actually, no, the 21 days is later because our next regular meeting is in 2 weeks. And so he's basically prevented council from overriding his veto.
But it says within 20. But it says within, so anytime within 21 days or by the next regular meeting.
Whichever is later. Oh,
Whichever is-
so
yes,
within.
Within to the latest time.
So council can vote tonight to override the.
If he vetoes tonight, if he doesn't veto tonight, I don't see how he can veto at all. How about something we passed 3 years ago? Can he veto that?
So the veto should stand, right? And if we're gonna contest it, we contest it tonight or we don't at all.
It's up to the mayor, and administration can look into further what that would mean with the borough's deadline tomorrow.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
I don't want to die on this hill. I think we have a very good relationship between the mayor and the council at this point. What can we do to make something happen that we can all agree on tonight?
Well, I think this decision is it's too hasty, and I think we're pushing the easy button. I mean, we're just choosing to increase taxes for another $10,000 when we have other means to deal with this and that we haven't done
I
yet.
agree with you. We just got our back to the wall on needing to do something now. How about if we put a caveat on this that it would only last a year or 6 months or some short term period of time, so we can pass this with an amendment that says, all right, it's good for a year. Would that like I say, I don't want to see us go to war over this. We should.
No, it's not worth doing that, but it's fundamentally flawed for a 0.250 increase. I mean, it's fundamentally flawed because it's not enough money to really do anything of substance here. I mean, one of the next items we're going to talk about then is cutting our health savings by $5,000. I mean, there's tons of little things other than raising property taxes on the local taxpayers. I just think there's other options.
Well, again, can you think of some compromise that we can deal with this problem tonight? Because you got 4 people that are sitting here that voted for this. So
well, I can't think of a compromise that's obviously reasonable, unfortunately here. I'm just trying to look at the language again here to understand the formalities of this. Well, I mean, let's do this then. I mean, yeah, at this point then, I mean, council on its next regular meeting, a written statement advising vetoes overridden by 2/3 of the authorized membership of the council within 21 days following the veto, or at the next regular meeting, whichever is later. Within 21 days, or at the next regular council meeting, whichever is later. I would agree with what Rachel said. I don't think it can be overturned. I don't think a veto can be overturned tonight. Not the way I'm reading this. I think it can be overturned at the next meeting. I don't think, according to this, I don't think it can be overturned tonight.
well, that's an argument to have at another time. What we need to do is come to some sort of an agreement so that we don't end up on opposite. I mean, like I say, I don't want to die on this hill. I've gotten along real well with you.
No,
I think you've got a lot of good ideas, but what you're doing is taking a power away from us that we have.
By authority of our municipal code, I'm doing that, and I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to do that, and then tomorrow I'm not gonna even lose a wink of sleep over this, because we're gonna move on to the next issue. Because when it comes to politics, I don't hold a grudge. We argue about the point at hand, and then we're going to move right on without any personal or any hard feelings whatsoever. So I'm following the code. I'm sticking to my veto, and I don't think it can be overturned tonight until the next meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
so just a point of order, that statute comes before city law, correct? City can't override statute, and so that I would look at the statute's language.
So then now we're going to get back. So now we're going to get back into the whole thing that our codes are, that we're going to throw our code out tonight.
Well, that's as a parliamentarian for the city, and still, this is an experience for me. I apologize, but from what I understand, city can't override state statute, and state statute.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that, obviously.
Yes, 2920.20 or 2.270 has a little bit different language. So from that language, it says a veto must be exercised before the next regular meeting of the governing body and must be accompanied by a written explanation of the reasons for the veto. A veto may be overwritten by a vote of 2/3 of the membership of the governing body within 21 days following the veto, or at the next regular meeting, whichever is later.
Okay, right there. It says it right there. It says the exact same thing. Whichever is later, within 21 days, or whichever is later.
Right. So they can veto it at the next meeting or within 21 days. So if 21 days goes past the next meeting, they have time after the next meeting up to 21 days to veto. However, if the meeting is past 21 days, then they would have time until that next meeting. Does that make sense?
No. If I veto it right now tonight, when can it be overturned according to statute?
Within 21 days or the next meeting, or. So
Or-
within 21 days. So anytime within 21 days at a
Yep.
meeting or at the next regular meeting.
So in other words, tonight.
Whichever is later. So the
Is the
keywords there are
time.
whichever is later.
Right. So anytime within that 21 days or at the next meeting, whichever is later. So whichever event comes later, they have until then to veto.
Okay, so you're saying that within the 21 days is later.
Or the next meeting, whichever one comes later. If 21 days is later or the next meeting is later, they have that time frame.
Right. So my point is if the 21, in this case, the 21 days would be later.
Correct.
And the
So
wording is within, you're saying the wording is within 21 days, meaning that it could be overturned tonight.
correct.
Okay,
Mayor?
understood. I see what you're saying. Yep, go ahead.
Is it possible for us to call a special meeting for tomorrow morning? I mean, we've done it in the past, to have special meetings, and you could get it to us in writing in the morning. And how late time frame do we have to get this into the borough? I would
Well, I mean, one thing I don't want to do is waste everybody's time either on this. I mean, we've already beat this up enough. If I'm just trying to get understand the language in the, and I think now maybe so what the clerk is saying is that the 21 day, within the specific language of within the 21 days would take precedence since it would be the later of the two past the next meeting. And I would agree that would be the I guess the precedent or the priority language in the way that that's written. So, all right, well,
Mr. Mayor.
yep, go ahead.
Okay, in my little pea brain, I am looking at tomorrow as being day one of the 21 days. So again, I'm going to ask that the clerk or the city manager calls someone and gets clarification of what has happened here tonight. And then, like Pearlie said, we can call a special meeting, right? Without the 5 days? Or the 7 days?
fine with me.
Notification? We can call a special meeting, right? I'm asking.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Sweat, we have to have the mill rate set before June 15th.
Right, I understand
to-
that. June 15th is tomorrow.
Before June 15th.
So tonight, so
Tonight
it's
is our
today.
last night, yes.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, because I'm not going to be an a-hole about this, but I mean, I understand what's going on here. I'll tell you what I'm going to do here. I will, yeah, I'm not folding, but I will withdraw the veto only because now we're going to be in a big mess with formalities. And one thing we're going to do though is get this straightened out on our code and the statutory language. And then what I would like to see at the next meeting is whether it's something from our attorney to clarify veto power. And not that I obviously or anyone wants to use that. I just think that, yeah, what we're doing here tonight is wrong. So, but again, I'm the same way. I'm not going to follow my sword over this. So in the interest and spirit of moving things along, I will withdraw my intent to veto. And if that's good, then we're going to move on to item K3.
Thank you,
Are we
Mr.
good?
Mayor.
Are we good with that?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
can we do an amendment of the amendment and put in there a caveat that at our next meeting, we're gonna vote again to see if we want to keep it at that raised rate or bring it back?
No, I think we're good with it. I think we're
Okay.
good with it because that's
Thank
just that's gonna cause, even further issues. So I think what we'll do is just go ahead and leave it. The council's spoken by a vote of 4-1. I'll go ahead and withdraw my veto again with just wanting to make sure that in the future, we've got the language, our municipal code in line with what the state statute says. And then I want interpretation of the exact language and how it's to be applied when a veto is actually used. And I don't know when the last time a mayor used veto powers in Soldovia, but I imagine it's been a number of years since that was used. So this is kind of a weird one because there's also a date involved tomorrow. Yeah, and I think if I did hold on and submit it by the next meeting, then that would probably just even cause more fits at the borough level. So, and I'm not willing to just completely upend all government over that. So, all right, with that being said, let's move on to item K3 here. We're 2.5
Just one
hours
more
in
thing,
here.
Mr. Mayor, I still would support a sunset clause on this, where at the end of the year it would go away. We're gonna have to redo our talk about mill rate again in a year.
Well, George, we can do that regardless, because
Yeah. I mean, it's going to come up. That's the thing. It's going to come up again next year. And
Except if it's part of the resolution, then it's something we have to do.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
Well, it's not just somebody's word saying, yeah, we're going to look at this again. It would be in the statute.
Well, every year the borough has us redo the mill rate though. So there'll be another resolution for another mill rate and we can drop it if we want.
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, so even if there was a sunset clause, I don't think we could bind ourselves to having to roll it back. I don't, that's probably wouldn't be good because who knows what's going to happen between now and next year. So.
All right. I was just trying to do something to.
Yep. No, I'm good. I'm good. I just,
All right.
I think we're headed in the right path here. So let's move on to item K3, resolution 21-35, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Soldovia, renewing the management agreement for the Sea Otter Community Center for the term beginning July 1, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2026, and authorizes the city manager to execute the appropriate documents. And this will be found on page 28 of your packet. If we could have presentation by staff.
Thank you, Mayor. So resolution 21-35 renegotiates a contract that we have with the borough via CIRSA, the Soldovia Recreational Service Area, for management of the Sea Otter Community Center. That contract that's currently in place is set to expire June 30th of this year. And so by passing this resolution, Council will send the message that it still wishes to assist the CIRSA with the management of the SOC in the same fashion as the current 5-year contract specifies in order to provide this service to the community. So again, as a reminder, the borough will not have a satellite community service or office within a community. And so the city, whenever this agreement first started, said we will manage the SOC. So we will supervise the employees that then run the SOC on behalf of the borough. But the CIRSA makes the decisions on what happens within the SOC. So it's a very interesting relationship. And what this contract allows, the services to still be provided with the city, ensuring the management on operations of the SOC. And it says that, the contract will extend for an additional 5 years beginning July 1 of this year. And then the resolution also addresses the other amendments that are in the new agreement, including the number of positions, because the CIRSA board approved not only a facility administrator and a janitor, but also a community activities coordinator. There's also a clause that addresses the opportunity for off-campus recreational activities, updating the amount of the contract as approved by CIRSA, which compensates the city for the full cost of the SOC employees. So it was discovered that the city has not been charging the full cost of the employees that are hired to help run the SOC. We'd only been charging the borough, which collects the CIRSA mill rate property tax, only been charging the wages. We hadn't been including the other benefits, including Social Security, Medicare, unemployment tax by the state. So now the contract and the amount the city is going to receive will account for all of those costs. And I don't know how long the city has not been billing the SRSA or the borough for the full cost of the employees. So that's an improvement to this contract. The 3% admin fee, initially we were charging 6%, now we're charging 3%. So maybe it's a washout in terms of how much revenue the city makes for helping offer the service to the community, but that's a change that happened. Other conditions, other changes that have been made in the contract, those are all addressed in the whereas clause found starting on line 21 of the resolution. And so after Seldovia City Council considers this resolution, it then also needs to be considered by the SRSA, and then the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly will vote on it. So it's a trifecta effort in order to ensure the management and operations of the SOC, with the city basically being the hub for the management of it.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, we'll go ahead and turn it over to council for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, have we got the general liability insurance? Is there a dollar figure that the SRSA is paying back to the city for that?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Rojas, SRSA does not compensate the city for insurance.
Why not?
That's a great question.
Okay, only because I started this way back when I was a chair of this. The city was very gracious of taking on this role, but at this point in time, we need to make sure that, and we had asked the city, even when I was on, that was years ago, about giving us a dollar figure of what insurance liability the city is covering and to charge the SRSA. And I thought they were doing that. So if they're not, we need to make sure they are. And why did we drop it from 6% to 3%? Because
the drop from 6% to 3%. So an admin fee is basically the city's personnel time managing the employees, as well as the payroll administration fee. And so if I were to think of 6% of what 6% generates, it's almost like, how to say this? 3% seemed like a compromise. It didn't seem like the city has been actively engaged with the SOC and the SRSA enough to justify 6%. So 3% felt like a compromise because now we're also charging for the other benefits. So that kind of, it's a more accurate reflection of how the city supports the SOC, how employees, aside from the employees that are at the SOC, support the management and operations of it.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm in agreement of reducing the costs that the city has to do of overseeing the SOC. So I guess I would have appreciated staying at 6% and then also making sure that the insurance, they're covering it. They've got a budget. They need to work within their budget. So that's and it seems how we are on this issue of trying to cover our bills. I would want to make sure all the entities that are under the umbrella of the city, including the Seldovia Art Council, are covering their bills in relationship to the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else? Okay. Heidi, do we have anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this?
I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Okay. We will go ahead and bring resolution 21-35 back to the council for final action.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask a question of the city manager, please.
Yep, go ahead.
As far as changing this resolution to include the insurance coverage, is that something to be done after we pass this, or does it need to be included as an amendment?
Through the mayor. So the contract that's currently in place states that the city will provide the insurance, and it lists what we have to provide. So in essence, it's saying that it's not something that CIRSA will cover. It's if you go to page 41 of your packet, clause 13, insurance, it says the borough will maintain the insurance on the building as respects to physical damage, except if the city caused the damage, then our insurance will respond. And then it says the city shall purchase at its own expense and maintain and enforce at all times during the term of this permit the following insurance policies. And so this contract, as previously established, stated the city will cover that. So if
For the employees. Would that be for employees?
no, for the it's commercial general liability, so it's for the activities that are conducted at the
activities.
SOC.
Right.
Workers' comp, and then we have to provide that coverage to the borough. And then if you wanted to require the CIRSA to cover the expense of what the insurance costs, I would say that we should delay the adoption of the resolution and continue negotiating with the borough and the CIRSA.
You know, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I would propose that we do just that. I think at this point in time, the way this was set up a long time ago, by the graciousness of the city, they said that we would run payroll, that we accepted the challenge of running payroll from the CIRSA and the SOC through the city as a favor. And so I don't think the citizens of Seldovia can really afford or should put out the money, because we're also already paying 0.75 mill rate to run the CIRSA to cover the insurance. I think that's something we should negotiate at this point in time. And I thought some time ago, I thought we were asking the city to give us a dollar amount and we would pay it. Whether or not there's a legality question there, that might be maybe where it's a holdup. But I would myself personally would say that the SOC, the CIRSA, should pay their own insurance coverage. And so I would say delaying this, if it's not on a big time crunch, would be a good thing to ask that question, depending on what the dollar amount is.
Through the mayor,
Yep.
Councilmember Rojas, it can be delayed, and the borough attorney shared with me that there can be a retroactive agreement. So basically, if we renegotiate and this passes at the next council meeting or the one after, we can say it went into effect retroactively July 1.
Okay, that works for me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Vivian. Point of order, real quick, question, Heidi, for you. Do we need to get a motion to adopt the resolution prior to any subsequent motion for postponement?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we wouldn't.
I keep going backwards. No, Mr. Mayor, if the council does not want to take any action tonight because there's no motion on the table, they can just choose to not take any further action and it can move on to the next item.
Okay,
If they wanted to make a motion to postpone until the next meeting for further information or in order to continue negotiation, they can do that as well. Those are both viable paths.
okay, sounds good. Before we get to that, any further discussion, questions, or comments from council? Okay, based on Vivian's comments and Rachel's comments, then is that the wishes? Vivian, do you want to, are you looking for something to postpone time certain or just put it back into the city manager's lap to continue negotiations?
I would say put it back in the lap of the city or our city manager. Seems how we have time and it can come forward again before the end of June. If that works for, otherwise I'm open to whatever works easiest for our city manager. What's easier for you? Make it easy.
Through the mayor, thank you, Councilmember Rojas. I'm not sure how this will affect the timing, so if we could leave the timing more open-ended, because then this has to go before the CIRSA, then the CIRSA has to possibly go before the assembly for additional budgetary authority to spend. So it may take more time than just a few weeks.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, if I may ask a question to clarify, this can be, we can pass this and then we can come back with renegotiation and put it back into the contract. can we do that? Is that what I heard you say earlier?
Through the mayor, I would recommend that you postpone and
Okay.
not pass,
Okay.
and have a contract with the insurance be incorporated to be covered by the CIRSA for consideration, and then CIRSA could say no, or the borough attorney could say,
Okay.
CIRSA wants this, so there's a time for negotiation.
Okay, I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the key point, Vivian, was that when we do pass it, it can be retroactive back to a date back in time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so so then it sounds like we just want to go ahead and take no action on this tonight. If that's any objections to that from council? Okay, hearing no objections, then Heidi will have no action on resolution 21-35 tonight, with the understanding that it'll go back to the city manager's purview for further negotiation. Okay, let's see, that'll take us down to item K4, resolution 21-36. Excuse me, a resolution of the city council of the city of Seldovia authorizing the city manager to enter into contract with the Alaska Municipal Health Trust for employee health insurance for fiscal year 2022, with the term beginning July 1st, 2021, and to execute all appropriate documents. And we'll have presentation by staff. This will be found on page 48 of your packet.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Alaska Municipal League, which the city is a member, they're kind of a membership organization that works with many municipalities across the state of Alaska, and they provide a number of services. For example, they helped arrange the remote sellers sales tax initiative, where the city of Seldovia, along with other municipalities, receives sales tax for online purchases through businesses like Amazon. And so there was a need identified by municipalities across the state for a more competitive health insurance plan for municipal employees. And so the AML came up with a shared service called the Alaska Municipal Health Trust. And that trust utilizes Premera, which has a stronghold in Alaska for providing in-network accessibility to Alaskans for healthcare coverage. And the quote that we received for a particular plan called the Stamina, $3,000 out-of-pocket plan, which that's the main difference between this healthcare plan and the plan we currently have. Medova, I believe, is a $2,000 deductible, and so now employees would be responsible for $3,000. But Medova, unfortunately, doesn't have a lot of in-network service providers in Alaska. And we actually had our insurance broker encourage the city to get off of our current insurance plan with Medova or Lifestyle Health, and that our insurance broker thought that this was a great new policy for the city to consider. And so it does come with cost savings for the city. As the mayor said in a prior comment, about $5,000 will be saved by switching to this plan. And then additionally, the city can join with Colonial Life, or I forget, they're kind of the competitor to Aflac, so that they can work with the city to offer bridges. So if an employee personally didn't want a $3,000 deductible, they could pay a little bit more and lower their deductible. And so that expense wouldn't come on the city, but it would still be something the city could offer to employees. So it's a way of trying to make up for the higher deductible that this plan will have. And I think that covers the main points of this this new healthcare plan.
Thank you for the overview. We'll go ahead and take it to council for questions or comments. Have a quick, go ahead.
Oh, Mayor, if I may, I also wanted to share with council, and I alluded to this in the manager's message in the budget, that it would be very advantageous for the city to be able to offer benefits, not just to its employees, but also to the family members of employees. It's some other municipalities are able to offer, but because of the city of Soldovia's budget, it's just not a benefit we can extend, but that it would be in the best interest of the city in order to retain or attract employees to be able to offer that in the future. So I did do that with both with Medova and with this Primera plan. And it frankly was shocking to see how much it could cost to add a dependent to the city's plan. For example, an employee and a child would be $1,500 a month. And it of course increases with the amount of people you add onto your plan. So I just wanted to share that with council, that I did try to explore providing better benefits to our employees, but given the financial state of the city, we're unable to do so.
Thank you for clarification on that. Any other questions or comments from council?
I have a comment.
Yep.
I'm gonna try to be nice. I'm glad you brought that up, the spouse and or family members. You know, I was going to try to see if we could talk about that at some point for the employee retention. And I knew it was going to be spendy, but I think all insurance companies need to be lined up and shot as far as I'm concerned. But I guess saving $5,000 this way is by changing again. And how good is that though to change insurance companies all the time? I mean, we've done it now, what, 2 or 3 times in the last few years?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Sway, I don't think there's any consequence to it other than an administrative burden. And doing this is in the best interest of the city because we're still able to provide healthcare coverage that employees can access. Primera has a stronghold in Alaska, and so so that's a great option, and small cost savings because we're pooling with other smaller cities so that we can get this rate. When our insurance broker bid us out to Primera, not included in the pool, the rates were significantly more and did not include other benefits like vision and prescription and dental. It was just medical, and it's higher than the monthly rate you see here for all of those services that we're able to get through the
Oh, you mean with the last medical insurance, they didn't have that?
no, if you go to page 55 in your packet.
Okay.
You'll
Oh,
see the
yeah, I read that.
the
Okay.
Tustamina 3000 PPO.
Right.
That's the plan that's competitive to what we currently have. And for the employee only, which includes medical, vision, prescription, and
that, yeah.
dental, that's $895.64. And if Primera were just to provide medical, it would be higher than that amount. So that's a benefit that we get pooling with the Alaska Municipal League's Health Trust. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, it is not of consequence to continue looking for better alternatives to provide this benefit to employees while saving the city money.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
No, I would just like to congratulate our city manager for doing the homework and coming up with an insurance plan that's less for the city and then better for their employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else? Okay. We'll
Mr.
go ahead.
Mayor,
Oh, go ahead, Harmony.
can we, to tack on another budgetary priority for ourselves, can we just think about budgeting for dependents in future and looking at what we need to set aside in order to be able to provide those benefits for employees? Because as you say, I mean, unless you're native, there's not a lot of health coverage can be a burden for the smaller communities in our state. So I know it's just another thing that we need to think about, but we do need to have some sort of line item in our budget and in our savings for insurance costs for better packages for employees. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if we've already done that, but just a thought.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone? We'll go ahead and go to the public here. Heidi, do we have anyone in the public that wishes to comment on this?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So that'll bring resolution 21-36 back to council for final action.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we accept resolution 21-36.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to accept resolution 21-36, second by Nathan. All those in favor, Rojas,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Morrison.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, that'll take us to item K5, resolution 21-37, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, naming the Seldovia Police Department, quote, the Chief Andy Anderson Seldovia Police Station, unquote, in honor of A.W. Andy Anderson. This will be found on page 64 of your packet. And if we could have presentation by staff.
Thank you, Mayor. So this topic has come before council over the past few months. Council had asked staff to get or solicit feedback from the public regarding the naming of the police department in honor of Chief Anderson, and that feedback is provided to you on page 65 of your packet. And this resolution is a little out of order in the sense that there was a ceremony and sign already posted on the building, but so it seems as though there is consensus that the Seldovia City Council agrees in naming the station after Chief Anderson. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Any council comments, questions? Okay. Heidi, anyone from the public that wishes to comment on this?
I'm not seeing anybody at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We'll go ahead and bring it back to council for final action, and that's resolution 21-37.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept resolution 21-37.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Sweat to accept resolution 21-37, second by Rojas, I believe. All those in favor of resolution 21-37, Rojas,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Morrison.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. That'll take us to item K6, action memorandum 21-13, confirming the appointment of Thomas Dietrich to the Seldovia Planning Commission. And this is found on page 70 of your packet. And Rachel, you can go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. This topic is actually for the city clerk.
Ooh.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Dietrich had been approached and asked, I can't remember by who at this point, I apologize, if he would be interested in volunteering for the Seldovia Planning Commission. And he came into the office and spoke with me briefly about that and put in his letter of interest. He's trying to get more involved in the community and helping out with a few other boards like the cemetery now, and wanting to help with other things in the city, as he stated in his letter of intent, that he is just wanting to see the community, I think he worded it as thrive. So with, huh? Flourish and prosper. Thank you, Ms. Hiltz. So with that, that memorandum is on page 70, as you said, and the administration recommendation was to approve action memorandum 2113.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. We'll put that over to council for discussion, questions, or comments from council.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask a question?
Yep, go ahead.
So how many people do we have on our planning and zoning now?
Currently, we have 2, so this would be a 3rd.
Oh, good. Going up. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
What he says as a community member and business owner, what kind of business does he have, if I can ask?
Yes, a bed and breakfast.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Questions or comments? I'll just make a quick comment. Yep. Obviously, we're always looking for volunteers. And when anyone from the public agrees to volunteer some time, we usually have to have a pretty good reason not to want to accept them. So again, this is a spot that is needed to fill, and we appreciate Tom coming forward and throwing his name in the hat to serve. So I'm definitely in support of it. Do we have anyone from the public that wishes to comment on this? Heidi, any hands?
None at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring action memorandum 21-13 back to council for final action.
I'll make a motion that we accept action memorandum 21-13.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to accept action memorandum 21-13, second by Nathan. And all those in favor, Rojas,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Morrison.
Yeah,
Okay, motion passes 5-0, and welcome Tom Dietrich on the appointment to the Soldovia Planning Commission. Okay, and then item L, unfinished business, none. Item M, new business, discussion on the value added building, uses of the building and process for securing a tenant. No, this could be a short conversation or this can be an hour conversation. So it's entirely up to you guys what you want to do. It wouldn't break my heart if this was postponed until the next meeting, but that's entirely up to you guys what you want to do here.
Mayor, I was going to share a similar sentiment. I could make this short and sweet, but we can't always guarantee the length of the discussion. And so I'd be happy to postpone whatever council would like, we can make happen.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
I would be in favor of having a good discussion on this at our next meeting where we can actually put good input into it.
Yeah, I
I'd
appreciate
support that as well.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
I totally agree with Vivian and you. This could be a 5-minute conversation or a 4-hour conversation. So I think postponing it to the next meeting is a good idea. Thanks.
Okay. Let's see. Heidi, I think we still have to go through the motions though, right? And then we'll do that on final action, or can we do that now?
Mr. Mayor, it is just a discussion, but I would recommend, because you have public presentation or hearing on the agenda, that at least you open up that section. So yes, probably go through the motions real quick. That could be considered presentation. And then just.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay. Let's go ahead and we'll just move with the comments that were just made by council. We'll go ahead and move to the public. If there's anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the discussion of the value added building.
We do have a public comment from Ms. Laurel Hiltz.
Yep, you bet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just encourage the city council to consider doing this as a work session, not once again at the same exact spot on the next agenda. So, because it's not going to get any higher in your agenda. So, thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. Okay, anyone else from the public, Heidi?
Not seeing any more hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll bring that back to council for final action on, I know we discussed postponing to time certain, or do you guys feel that a workshop might be more appropriate? This has been going on for 9 years now, on the 9th, more than that. So it's time, like we discussed earlier, it's time to start making some action here on some of these things that are stagnant, if you will.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
if we have a choice, then I would prefer a workshop.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
I'd like to see us postpone it till the next meeting. And then if we wrangle and can't make any good decisions, then have a workshop. But maybe we can manage to get through this in one meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, Vivian. Whoops, her mic's not working if she's talking.
oh, sorry about that.
Oh, nope, there
I
you go.
would, yeah, I would agree that we discuss it, have it on the agenda for next meeting. New information maybe will be coming up, and then let's schedule a work session and go from there. Put it on the agenda as an item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and just formalize that, if we can get that postponement in the form of a motion here, and then we can just get through this quickly.
I'll make a motion that we put the value-added processing plant information on our next agenda for June 28th.
Okay, so we have a motion to postpone until next meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone just the discussion on the value added building until the next meeting by Rojas, second by Nathan. All those in favor, Rojas,
Aye.
Baden,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Morrison.
Right.
Okay, motion passes. That will be postponed until the next meeting, and I appreciate that because I think we owe it to ourselves to be able to have a good discussion. And now that we're going on 3.5 hours in, I don't know how productive that'll be. Let's go to item N, the city manager's report. This will be found on page 77 of your packet.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, guys. I'm going to run this one just because I was acting city manager the last couple of weeks, but Rachel will step in the end with a few additions. Just a brief summary. There was a question at the last meeting about how many vaccinations had been offered in Seldovia. And so there's a summary of 17 from public health on their first visit, 12 on their second visit, and then SVT. And there's a memo provided by them following the city manager's report has administered 246 complete vaccinations and is offering vaccinations for patients who are 18 years or older. Alaska Rural Water Association, Kevin came down to visit. Unfortunately, we didn't have all the parts that we needed for our sewer pumps. They didn't come with gaskets. So we've ordered those. They've been flown down. They're here. And Kevin is going to come back down here in the next week or so to help hopefully install those new pumps into the sewer lift stations. We did have a visitor from the State of Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation's Rural Maintenance Worker Program, Tanner Coate, who came in and worked with John on providing assistance in water sampling needs and evaluating the city's septic tank and dam. It was short. It was pretty sweet visit, and you had some good feedback over just different things that we could do to help with that dam area. City has received, I meant to put a post out, but it hasn't happened yet, but we did receive our Bear Saver double wide cans. They're in the lot over there, 5 of them. Woo! And we also purchased 6 portable bear proof cans. Those have gone out in town in temporary spots until maintenance can install the double wide cans that were received, and then the portable cans will go to more portable places. There's one by the bridge, for instance. That's a portable place because we can't install a can there. So with that, we'll have 5 double wides, well, 6 double wides, and then the 2 that are already here. So 8 double wides in total and 6 portable cans throughout the city. So that's fantastic. Then there was a fantastic community event for those who weren't able to participate. It was a pretty good showing for when the smoke came in. I watched it come off the ferry. It was really, actually really cool. And we had a really great turnout with a lot of people. So that was great to see the support for that. And I'm working now closely with ADF and G. I got to meet one of their representatives who was taking pictures and videos for that entity. So we're going to be sharing pictures and videos back and forth and just really making sure that that hatchery remains very highly promoted. Land use management plan. This was brought up earlier in the meeting. I'm glad it's still on everybody's minds. The Planning Commission is working through the comp plan. They've made it through 2 parts of the comprehensive plan, 2 out of 5. And we're hoping to have that information compiled and to the council for review by September. And with that, the city staff will also be compiling information for the land use management development later this summer or fall. So that'll all kind of come together. American Rescue Plan first installment's been increased to $33,000. I will let council know when that comes through. Staff transitions. We have had a few transitions in office over the last couple weeks. Mark Haverkate, one of our senior meals cooks, assistant cooks, has ended his service with the city. We did have a new employee step in. Cheryl Wilkerson has been hired, and we also had Diamond Kennedy filling in while Margaret Moonen was out. So Margaret's now back with Cheryl, and we really want to thank Diamond for her service. And then unfortunately also John Kennedy has put in his notice with the city. So his last full day was Friday, but he's offered to stay on and help out with water and other projects part-time as the city needs. That's something that I'm sure him and City Manager Friedlander will be discussing in the short future. The position's been posted and John Gruber is filling in. So he started this morning. He's filling in until that position is hired. Water leaks and issues. I just wanted to remind council that this is still ongoing. Spring has happened. Spring has sprung. Summer. So we every spring see a list of water leaks sneak up, and this year we've had a few sewer issues as well. One that we were able to suss out at the end of the last week. So hopefully the sewer's up and running for the mains on the city part. For at the moment, there are a couple property owners who are working on their individual services on updating those to make them run more efficiently. And there are the 2 large water leaks right at this time that the city is working on a plan to address. Dedication was a great ceremony. A good turnout. I was really happy to see we pulled that off. I know I heard from the community that from a few people that they were startled that it was so abrupt, but it was very impromptu dedication ceremony after a discussion with the family. They had their time to be here was shortened. And so in honor of them and wanting to support them, the city had a ceremony with a 24 hours notice and was able to honor that family. So that's what I've got.
Awesome. Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate that. Very good. And appreciate you stepping in while Rachel was out on PTO. So I think you did a good job and things went well. So, all right.
And Mayor, if I may just add something really quick.
Yep, go ahead. You bet.
Aside from seconding your appreciation of the city clerk, because it is very nice to have staff that are trained so that they can pick up when someone leaves for a little bit. So we all need that. So I'm very grateful. I just wanted to share with council some exciting news, especially because this was one of your top priorities for 2021. GCI let me know that they are in the exploratory phase, having a survey boat come out to Seldovia in July to locate a good landing for a submarine cable. This would allow them to lay fiber optic if they were to get funding for it. And so I've shared this with President Collier at SVT to see if there is a way that the city and the tribe could partner together, since there's a lot of tribal broadband grant funding. And I'm not sure of the expiration date of that, but it would be great if there could be some sort of partnership there. But it's only in the exploratory phase. It doesn't guarantee anything, but at least it's the first step in order to get fiber optic cable laid down. And this is something that they did or are working on in Unalaska. It does provide better internet service that's faster and more reliable. And to give you a sense of scope, in order to do the fiber optic cable laying in Unalaska, it's a $60 million project. So I don't know how much it would cost to bring over fiber optic. It's already in Homer. And so coming over to Seldovia, and I would also encourage GCI to consider supporting our rural partners along the peninsula like Nonwalek and Port Graham to make it a bigger project that could be more of a possibility to actually happen. And of course, it's a big project in which they would have to dig up the roads and lay the cable. And then, of course, there would be extensions from everyone's homes and businesses. I'm not exactly sure how that would work. So it's definitely a mega project that would happen in Seldovia, but I just wanted to share that they are exploring it for Seldovia and taking this first step, which should occur in July.
Hey, Rachel, I just had a quick follow-up to that. Have we had any latest, any new information from Vertical Bridge on the tower process?
That would actually be a great question for our city clerk who helps me with the planning. But as far as I know, I believe they were still waiting on NEPA results. And it seems like the city clerk's head shake says, yes, that is the case.
That's what
the
I
last
remember.
I've heard.
Okay, that's the case. They're still waiting for the NEPA.
As far as I know, I haven't heard anything different, but I can check in again with them tomorrow.
Okay, I'd just be curious, maybe at the next meeting, if we had a little update on, just to know that hopefully that's still moving forward in a good way. So, okay, thank you, Heidi and Rachel, for the manager's report. Item O, informational items not requiring action, none. Item P, executive session, none. Item Q, council and mayor comments concerning items not on the agenda. Rojas.
Yes, a big thank you to Heidi. I know I called her a few times down at the city office. She's an exceptional person to have down there. And welcome back, Rachel. And thank you, folks who stayed all night with us and staff. Don't forget, as Laurel mentioned earlier, that the Art Council will be doing a concert this Friday and Saturday, and it'll be an outdoor venue on SVT's deck if it doesn't rain. Otherwise, we'll go inside. Hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you. Peyton.
I know this is the time where we say goodnight, but I do have a question about our king salmon fishery. I've been noticing the last couple of years, privately owned planes that park at the end of the runway and fish off the run. First of all, I don't know that I feel like that's a safety issue. We do have emergency flights that come and go in our community, but I was just wondering, did we decide on some way of are we reporting in any way the fish that get pulled out of there? How many people, how many bodies are fishing? What is our what is ADF&G requiring of us in order to maintain that fishery long term? Is it just a promotion project, or?
Through the mayor, yes. I've been told by Fish and Game's Mike Booz that it would just be great if the city keeps promoting it. And as far as numbers or regulations, the state regulates the fish and we don't take part in that. But it is in our best interest to continue to promote people buying licenses or permits, because that's what the state uses with the feds to get the grant funding, because just for the smolt alone, it's over $100,000 just to bring the fish and doesn't include all the other aspects. In terms of the safety issue, if council as a body wanted to contact the state to share your concern because the city doesn't manage the airport, you could draft a letter just sharing your concern, or any constituent of the city could contact the state independently.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't, I mean, we want people to fish and things. Obviously, it's not an issue of people fishing there or using that space, but the way I've seen people park there in the last week or two seems rude. But they're parking their plane at the end of on the runway, like not even on the dirt. I just couldn't believe what I saw. But anyways, color me a fuddy-duddy. Thank you guys for everything that you do. Really appreciate our public who came, the public who came and spoke, who aren't here anymore, and the city staff for everything that you do. Really appreciate you. So, cheers.
Okay, thank you, Army. George.
Yeah, I kind of dropped the ball on getting hold of the state, but first off, we have a lot of tools available to us right now. There's the airport is posted with state signs saying authorized personnel only. And that means no four-wheelers and kids and dogs running back and forth across the runway, which is what we've seen at various times. And as far as parking outside of the cones on the that's just unsafe. And our police chief has every authority to contact and question anybody operating an airplane or not on that airport. A pilot is required to produce identification, show his pilot's license, and so forth to any certified local law enforcement officer. And as far as running the four-wheelers and the kids off, I don't think there's any problem with that either. That is with the airport is within the city limits. That certainly is a safety violation, and the state has laws and regulations also that govern folks on the airport. So I ran some of them off myself a while back. So it's something that needs to be looked at. There's nobody needs to be fishing from the other side of the runway. That's just, there's no good access to that area that's not unsafe. Thank you all for all your hard work. Glad to see Rachel back. She has a smile on her face, so that's good. Maybe I just never could see it because of the mask. That's all.
Okay, thank you, George. Sweat.
Yeah, the same here. I want to thank everybody for all their hard work, and Heidi, especially for filling in while Rachel was gone. You did a great job. And Rachel, welcome back. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Pearlie.
Yeah, just real quick, great meeting. Nice to see some public showing up and voicing their opinions. Thanks.
Thank you, Pearlie. Yep, same for me. Appreciate everyone's discussion, good spirited debate as always. And yeah, welcome back, Rachel. Let's see, next meeting will be held on June 28th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And if we could get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
Any objection? None heard. We are adjourned. Okay, thank you, everyone. Appreciate the turnout tonight. So thank you, and we'll see you again next one.
Thank you. Good night, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, good night.